Welcome to The Echo of Silence. If you love stories about connection, compassion, and the power of listening, hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the next emotional journeys. Now, let's dive together into a world where silence speaks louder than words. The Grand Imperial Hotel, a monolith of polished marble and hushed grandeur, usually resonated with a carefully choreographed symphony of polite whispers, the soft clink of artisanal coffee cups, and the gentle rustle of designer fabrics. Today, however, that delicate harmony had fractured into a jarring cacophony of anxious murmurs and a palpable, uncomfortable silence emanating from the very heart of the lobby. At the sprawling, gleaming marble reception desk, Leo, the lead concierge, a young man whose usual debonair composure was now marred by a faint sheen of perspiration, gripped the counter's edge. His eyes, typically calm and reassuring, darted nervously towards the rapidly expanding constellation of curious guests and staff, their gazes converging on the epicenter of the disruption. "Ma'am," he repeated, his voice tight, barely concealing the edge of desperation that had begun to fray his professional veneer. "For the third time, we do not understand you." Standing motionless before him, Miss Haruko Tanaka remained an enigma of serene control. A name whispered with reverence in the boardrooms of Tokyo and New York. She was a figure of quiet power, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blue coat that somehow managed to project both strength and an almost ethereal elegance. Her hands were clasped politely in front of her, a gesture of traditional deference, yet her eyes, sharp, profound, and utterly unreadable, scanned the burgeoning tension around her like a seasoned general surveying a battlefield. Every subtle shift in body language, every hushed aside, every ripple of agitation, was registered, analyzed, and filed away in the formidable chambers of her mind. Behind her, her assistant, a perpetually flustered young man named Kenji, his dark suit a stark contrast to his rapidly rising panic, frantically tapped at his phone, his brow furrowed in a silent, desperate plea for technological intervention. Two hotel translators, typically confident in their mastery of multiple tongues, huddled in the background, their faces a telltale crimson of utter helplessness, their whispered attempts at communication failing utterly. "Should we call security?" one staff member muttered from behind the desk, her voice barely a breath. "She's not being aggressive," another whispered back, a faint tremor in her tone. "But she won't respond to anything in English, French, or Mandarin, and she's booked in the presidential suite, for heaven's sake." The irony was a bitter tang in the air, the apex of luxury, now an unwitting stage for a profound breakdown in the most basic form of human connection. From the far end of the vast, soaring lobby, near the gleaming brass luggage carts, Elias Thorne observed the unfolding drama. His gray janitor's uniform, worn with a quiet, almost deliberate anonymity, allowed him to blend into the opulent surroundings like an intentional design choice, a shadow in the periphery, seen but never truly noticed. People, especially in a place like the Royal Grand Hotel, where luxury was measured not just in acres of polished marble and crystal chandeliers, but in the subtle nuances of who was allowed to be heard and who was meant to remain silent, rarely truly saw janitors. It was part of the job, a carefully cultivated invisibility he had long perfected, a shield against the intrusive gaze of a world that valued titles over intrinsic worth. As he meticulously polished the edge of a glass table, his movements were precise, almost meditative, a stark, calming counterpoint to the escalating chaos at the reception. His mind, however, was anything but still, absorbing the unspoken tensions in the air like a sponge. A sudden, sharp click-clack of stilettos announced the grand, almost theatrical descent of the hotel manager, Miss Vivienne Hayes, from the sweeping marble staircase. Her entrance was a carefully choreographed performance, a descent onto a Broadway stage, each step a testament to her meticulously manufactured control. Her crimson lipstick, a vibrant, almost defiant beacon against her pale, determined face, was a mask of unyielding authority. "Good morning," she announced, her voice perfectly modulated, theatrically calm, designed to project an aura of effortless command as she placed both hands firmly on the reception counter, asserting her dominance over the situation. "I'm the general manager here. How may we assist you, Miss Tanaka?" Haruko Tanaka offered no response. Her gaze remained fixed somewhere beyond Vivienne, beyond the desk, a distant, almost ethereal quality to her stillness, as if her focus lay on a horizon invisible to others. The silence she maintained was absolute, an impenetrable wall, not of defiance, but of a profound, internal resolve. "Miss Tanaka," Vivienne repeated, firmer this time, a subtle edge of impatience, thin and sharp as a razor, beginning to fray the edges of her professional calm. Still nothing. The stillness from Haruko was absolute, an unyielding rock against the rising tide of frustration. Vivian turned, forcing a tight, brittle smile at her staff, a performative display of composure that barely concealed the barely contained rage bubbling beneath her polished surface. "She's refusing to speak. This is unacceptable." The word *unacceptable* hung in the air, a judgment of Haruko's very presence. The murmurs from the gathering crowd grew louder, rippling through the vast lobby like a disturbed current. From where he stood, Elias felt the subtle, unsettling shift in the room's atmosphere, something deeper, more insidious than mere confusion. It was a pervasive current of thinly veiled contempt, disguised with practiced smiles and polite phrases, masquerading as customer service. It was fear, chilling and palpable, cloaked in the guise of professionalism. Vivian, her patience clearly wearing thin, leaned towards Haruko, her voice dropping to a slow, deliberate cadence, as if addressing a recalcitrant, misbehaving child. "This is America, ma'am. If you want service here, you need to speak English." The words were delivered with a condescending precision, designed to belittle and impose. A heavy, suffocating pause settled over the scene, punctuated only by the distant, almost subliminal hum of the ventilation system. Then, softly but unmistakably, Haruko Tanaka exhaled. A single, quiet breath. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't a sigh of exasperation or defeat. It was deliberate, measured, a profound act of self-possession. Elias, watching from his unnoticed corner, felt a distinct chill slide down his spine. This was not a woman being difficult. This was a woman making a profound, almost sacred statement through her very being. Kenji, her assistant, stepped forward nervously, his hands fluttering in a defensive gesture, his face a mask of escalating anxiety. "She's not being difficult. She prefers to communicate in her native language for formal matters." His words were a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm of misunderstanding. "Formal?" Vivian laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor, a dismissive sneer twisting her crimson lips as she shook her head in disbelief. "We're not in Tokyo. If she wants to order towels or champagne, she can point like everyone else, but she's blocking the check-in line." The absurdity of the situation, the stark juxtaposition of the hotel's grandeur with the petty struggle over a fundamental human right, the right to be understood on one's own terms, was almost comical, yet laced with a dangerous undercurrent. Elias, without a word, his movements deliberate and unhurried, placed the polishing cloth back on his janitor's cart. His feet, almost of their own accord, began to move slowly, instinctively, towards the growing commotion. He didn't know why, exactly. There was something in the woman's eyes, a flicker he couldn't name, a profound sense of injustice, but he recognized it with an aching familiarity. It was the look of someone being measured in a currency they never agreed to use, a silent protest against a system that refused to acknowledge their intrinsic worth, their very humanity. He saw echoes of his own past in her unwavering gaze. Vivienne, her face now a mask of cold, unyielding resolve, waved a peremptory hand towards a uniformed security guard nearby, her voice rising in imperious command. "Escalate this to management security." Kenji, alarmed, quickly stepped between them, his body language a frantic shield, his voice laced with desperation. "Please, she's not causing harm. She's one of the most respected executives in Japan. She's here for a major summit, a potential multi-million-dollar partnership for this very hotel." "She's delaying service in a 5-star hotel," Vivian snapped, her voice now a sharp, guttural growl, completely abandoning her carefully constructed calm. "We don't have time for guessing games and silent treatment." Her frustration had morphed into an aggressive, dismissive fury. Haruko Tanaka's hand twitched, ever so slightly, a fleeting ripple of emotion, a near betrayal of her iron control, before returning to its perfect stillness. Her silence, Elias realized with a chilling clarity, was not weakness. It was a blade, finely honed by years of adversity, impeccably controlled, radiating an almost palpable power. It was a defiant refusal to engage on terms that diminished her, a silent assertion of her unyielding spirit. That's when Elias, having navigated the fringes of the gathering crowd, stepped forward, directly into the heart of the confrontation. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet, almost unremarkable, yet it cut through the din of whispers and Vivian's escalating frustration with surprising clarity, like a single, clear note in a storm of noise. Everyone turned. Vivian blinked, momentarily disoriented by the unexpected intrusion, her gaze sharp, incredulous. "Mr. Thorne, this doesn't concern maintenance." Her tone was dismissive, laden with contempt, an unspoken command for him to retreat to his assigned station. I know, Elias said simply, his gaze unwavering, meeting hers with a quiet, unyielding strength that surprised even Vivienne. He then turned fully towards Miss Tanaka, his posture respectful, his gaze empathetic, unwavering. He offered a slight bow, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, a subtle dip of his head and shoulders, but just right, a deeply ingrained cultural formality he had learned and respected, a gesture that spoke volumes where words had failed. Then, in soft, fluent Japanese, a language as melodic and intricate as the patterns on a silk kimono, he spoke. Time, it seemed, literally stopped. The piped-in lobby piano music, usually a soothing, almost unnoticed backdrop, seemed to fade into utter non-existence, replaced by a profound, reverent silence. Haruko Tanaka's eyes widened, not dramatically, not with a sudden flash of theatrical surprise, but with a slow, profound, almost spiritual dawning recognition of being truly seen, truly heard, truly *understood*. A subtle warmth, a breathtaking softening, spread across her features, melting the mask of impassive stillness she had worn. She said something in Japanese, quiet and melodic, a soft cascade of gratitude and acceptance. Elias nodded, a gentle acknowledgement of the unspoken contract forged between them. He gestured towards the opulent lounge area, his hand sweeping gracefully, invitingly. We can sit there. No pressure, no misunderstanding. Just a moment of quiet, if you wish. Kenji, Haruko's assistant, stood utterly dumbfounded for a moment, then turned to the stunned hotel staff, his face a mixture of bewildered excitement and profound relief. He stammered, his words tumbling out. He's speaking with her perfectly, with Kyoto intonation. He understood everything. Vivienne's voice cracked, just barely, a hairline fracture in her manufactured control, a desperate gasp of disbelief. How? How do you even know Japanese? Her carefully constructed world, her hierarchy of power and control, was visibly crumbling around her. I don't think that matters right now, Miss Hayes, Elias said gently, his gaze unwavering, meeting Vivienne's frantic eyes with a quiet, undeniable authority that transcended his janitor's uniform, cutting through her bluster. Vivienne opened her mouth, poised to unleash a torrent of indignant protest, but Haruko Tanaka, the woman who had said nothing for 15 agonizing minutes, raised one hand calmly, a silent, imperious command. Her eyes, still fixed on Elias, held a depth of gratitude, respect, and a dawning kinship that silenced the entire room more effectively than any shouted order or managerial directive ever could. Okatoba Nayamimasu, I'll take you up on your kind offer, she said softly, her voice melodic and resonant, imbued with a profound sense of relief. And just like that, the most powerful woman in the room, a global executive who commanded boardrooms and brokered multi-million-dollar deals, a woman who had stood unyielding against the combined force of the hotel's management, left the gleaming marble counter and walked, not with the general manager, not with her assistant, but with an unassuming hotel janitor towards the quiet, unexpected sanctuary of the lounge. Not a word more was needed. In that stunned, profound silence, guests and staff alike were left with a new kind of question, one that echoed louder than all the commotion that had preceded it, a question that resonated with unexpected force in the opulent halls of the Grand Imperial. Who is this janitor? And what else has this hotel, in its relentless pursuit of superficial grandeur, chosen not to see? The polished facade of the Grand Imperial, for a fleeting, yet infinitely profound moment, had cracked, revealing something far more human, far more complex, and infinitely more valuable beneath. The unspoken symphony of connection had finally found its conductor. The tea lounge, typically a hushed annex of the Grand Imperial, now felt like a sanctuary, a sacred space carved out from the hotel's bustling heart. Elias set the delicate porcelain cup on the low, polished mahogany table between them, his movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. Each gesture was precise, born of ingrained memory, careful not to let the ceramic clink against the saucer. It wasn't just tea. It was a ritual, a quiet ceremony he hadn't performed in nearly a decade, a forgotten language rediscovered in the hushed intimacy of shared understanding. The subtle aroma of freshly brewed sencha diffused through the air, mingling with the faint scent of old leather and polished wood, creating an atmosphere of profound tranquility. Haruko Tanaka sat across from him, her posture regal, hands folded gently in her lap, a study in contained power. The soft, ambient light, filtered through the lounge's tall, arched windows, cast gentle, shifting patterns across the gleaming wood floor, illuminating motes of dust dancing like tiny, ephemeral stars in the air. Her navy coat, still bearing the faint, almost imperceptible dampness from the morning drizzle, hung neatly over the armrest beside her, a subtle reminder of the hurried, frustrating journey that had unexpectedly brought her to this quiet interlude, to this encounter that felt both accidental and destined. But it wasn't her impeccable poise, her formidable reputation, or even her quiet determination that truly captivated Elias. It was her restraint. There was an immense, almost formidable power in the way she held her stillness, a profound self-mastery. It was like a violin string tuned to an exquisite tension, taut enough to sing with vibrant resonance at the slightest touch, yet held in perfect, unyielding control, never quite snapping under the immense pressure of the world. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a language he understood intimately. "Arigato," she said softly, her eyes momentarily lowered in a gesture of profound respect, then meeting his with an unwavering intensity. Her voice, though quiet, resonated with an undeniable sincerity. "For speaking with intention, for seeing beyond the noise." Elias nodded once, a faint, almost imperceptible dip of his head. A wry, self-deprecating smile played on his lips. "It's been a while. My accent's probably rusted." The years of disuse, he thought, had surely dulled the sharp edges of his fluency. "No," she replied, her gaze perceptive, penetrating, yet entirely devoid of judgment. "It's not rust. It's memory. It's the echo of authentic understanding." Her words, simple yet profound, resonated deep within him, a validation he hadn't realized he craved. A silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable or awkward, but suspended, rich with unspoken understanding, like the held breath just before a beautiful piece of music begins. It was a silence that allowed thoughts to unfurl, emotions to settle, and deeper connections to take root. She studied him carefully, her gaze probing, assessing, yet imbued with a newfound respect. Her voice, when she spoke again, was in careful, impeccably nuanced English, touched with a delicate, almost musical Kyoto lilt that was both familiar and enchanting. "You learned Japanese formally." It was a statement, not a question, a deduction drawn from his precise intonation and phrasing. "Kyoto University," Elias confirmed, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, a fleeting glimpse of a past life. 7 years as a cultural linguistics lecturer, specialized in East Asian silence dynamics. Specifically, the sociolinguistic implications of unspoken communication in formal and informal contexts, with a focus on negotiation strategies. He elaborated, a faint flicker of his academic self returning. Haruko raised an eyebrow, just slightly, a minute shift that, to Elias, spoke volumes of surprise, intrigue, and a dawning recognition of a kindred spirit. Her stillness, he realized, was not emptiness, but a canvas upon which subtle, powerful reactions were painted. "I wrote my thesis on the phrase kuki wo yamu," he added, a genuine, unburdened smile now gracing his features. "The art of reading the air, understanding the unspoken cues, the nuances of context, the subtext of human interaction. It's about empathy, really, disguised as observation." That earned him a whisper of a grin from Haruko, a fleeting ripple on the surface of her composure, there and gone like a fleeting shadow on still water, a profound acknowledgement of a shared, esoteric understanding. "And now, a janitor," she said, her voice devoid of mockery, imbued instead with a genuine, almost academic curiosity, a probing search for meaning beyond the obvious. Her eyes, however, held a glint of something more, an unspoken challenge. "Now, a janitor," Elias confirmed, his tone even, accepting of his current reality, yet with an underlying current of weary resignation that he couldn't quite mask. "At least until someone figures out I know more than where the mops are kept, or until the hotel decides my deviant behavior is grounds for dismissal." A wry humor colored his words, yet there was a deep-seated layer of vulnerability. Haruko looked down at her tea, her gaze contemplative. She gently blew over its surface, creating tiny, ephemeral ripples that mirrored the disturbances in her own carefully ordered world. "Why hide?" Her question was simple, direct, cutting to the heart of the matter with surgical precision. It was not accusatory, but genuinely inquisitive. Elias leaned back in his plush velvet chair, the rich fabric sighing softly beneath him, a sound that seemed to echo his own internal release. His voice was quiet, almost a confession, an unveiling of a deeply guarded truth. "After my wife, Emma, passed, I needed a job where no one asked me about my past or my future, where the work was simple, tangible, and didn't require me to perform, to pretend, or to engage in the complexities of intellectual discourse while my heart was shattered." The raw vulnerability in his tone was stark against the opulent backdrop of the lounge, a stark contrast to the carefully curated image he usually presented to the world. Her gaze softened, a flicker of deep empathy in her sharp eyes. But she said nothing, offering the priceless gift of silent, unwavering presence, an acknowledgement that spoke more than 1,000 words. Silence isn't always a retreat, he added, his voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes it's the only honest thing left. The only way to truly exist when everything else feels like a lie. For a moment, Haruko looked out the window, her fingers gracefully tracing the delicate rim of her teacup, her thoughts drifting to distant shores, to parallels in her own journey. The city skyline shimmered outside, a testament to human ambition and noise. In my country, she said, her voice a soft murmur, imbued with ancient wisdom, we are taught that the most powerful person in the room is often the one who speaks last. The one who truly listens, who observes, and then, if necessary, intervenes with precision. Elias chuckled, a low, rueful sound that held a lifetime of disillusionment. In this country, the one who speaks loudest usually wins. The one who dominates, who projects an image of unwavering confidence, often at the expense of genuine understanding. Haruko turned back to him, her expression now serious, thoughtful, imbued with a deep conviction. And that is why I stopped speaking English in negotiation, for a time. Words have become noise, weapons of obfuscation rather than tools of clarity. Negotiation is supposed to be about intent, about mutual understanding and shared objectives. But here it's often about performance, about grandstanding, about winning at all costs. Her eyes held a deep weariness, a profound frustration with the superficiality and aggression she encountered daily in the cutthroat corporate world. Elias watched her, a deep sense of recognition blooming within him, an almost spiritual kinship. He saw her not merely as a billionaire executive, a formidable figure of global commerce, but as a fellow human being, a fellow soul trying to protect something tender and essential beneath the hardened, polished exterior she presented to the world. He knew that feeling intimately, the constant battle to preserve one's true self in a world that demanded conformity. You're not here to sign a deal, are you? He said finally, his voice cutting through the layers of pretense, arriving at the core truth. You're here to see who's willing to listen before speaking, to discern genuine intent from mere performance. Her eyes met his, unwavering, and a subtle, almost imperceptible nod confirmed his intuition. He was right. A silent, profound understanding passed between them, a bridge built not of grand pronouncements or corporate jargon, but of shared truth, of unspoken struggles and mutual respect. Back in Tokyo, she began, her voice gaining a quiet, formidable strength, imbued with the authority of experience. An American firm once offered me a partnership. Lavish praise, smooth talkers, promises of unprecedented synergy, but behind their carefully constructed smiles, they mocked my accent, my subtle cultural nuances, when they thought I wasn't listening. They didn't realize I understood every word, every dismissive chuckle, every patronizing glance. What did you do? Elias asked, intrigued, sensing the steel beneath her calm demeanor. I terminated the deal, she replied simply, her voice flat, devoid of outward emotion, yet resonating with an inner resolve, and donated the technology, which they desperately coveted, to a non-profit instead. It cost me millions. She looked him in the eye, a glint of quiet defiance in her gaze, a testament to her unshakable integrity. But I slept better. Elias smiled, not out of amusement, but out of genuine admiration for her uncompromising integrity, her willingness to sacrifice financial gain for personal principle. I hope that keeps you up at night for the right reasons, he said, the words a quiet acknowledgement of her moral compass. Haruko nodded once, a brief, decisive movement, a silent reaffirmation. Then, her gaze softening, imbued with a tentative curiosity, she asked softly, "Do you still teach?" "No," he said, the word a quiet echo of a past life, a life now irrevocably altered. "My students grew up. I didn't." There was something in his tone that stopped her, an ache, quiet but steady, like grief that had learned how to wear a polite, unassuming face, a profound sadness carefully contained. Haruko glanced towards the hallway, where the glass doors of the lounge framed the bustling, noisy lobby beyond, a world of ceaseless activity and superficial interactions. They wanted to call security on me for being quiet. Her voice held a hint of disbelief, a quiet outrage at the absurdity of the situation. Elias didn't look. He didn't need to. He already knew the scene, had seen its variations play out countless times in different forms, in different contexts. "They were afraid of your silence," he said, his voice quiet, insightful, hitting upon a universal truth. "People always are. Silence leaves too much room for truth." It exposes what they prefer to keep hidden. Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible above the distant hum of the hotel, yet carrying immense weight. But you didn't flinch. I saw your eyes, Elias said, his gaze fixed on hers, unwavering, empathetic. Not your silence. I saw the defiance, the quiet strength, the human being beneath the executive persona. That made her go still again, not with tension this time, but with a profound, almost startled surprise, a dawning realization that someone had truly seen her. A softness crept into her features, like someone who had been carrying a great, invisible weight for years and suddenly realized they could set it down, if only for a moment. She whispered in Japanese, almost to herself, a mantra rediscovered, Shizukesu wa anata no mikata. Silence is your ally. Then she looked up, her gaze direct, penetrating, yet imbued with a newfound trust. Tell me the truth, Elias Thorne. Why did you come to me? What compelled you to step out of your designated role? He paused, and in that pause, everything he had lived, everything he had lost, everything he had learned about human nature, seemed to hang in the air between them, a profound, unspoken narrative. The way they looked at you, he said finally, his voice barely a murmur, yet resonating with deep conviction. Like you were the problem. Like silence meant ignorance, a lack of capacity. I've seen that look before. On faces that used to admire me, before I lost my title, my voice, my status, my sense of belonging. The unspoken pain in his words was raw, yet controlled, a testament to years of quiet suffering. Haruko tilted her head, absorbing his honesty, her eyes softening in recognition. And now? Now, Elias said, a wry, self-aware smile touching his lips. A profound sense of resignation mixed with a quiet dignity. I just mop around the edges, unnoticed, and hope someone notices when they step in dirt they tracked in themselves. Hope someone looks beyond the uniform. That made her smile, a faint, genuine curve of her lips, a rare and beautiful sight, a shared understanding of life's quiet ironies. You noticed me, she said. I remembered you, he corrected gently, his eyes holding hers, a deeper truth in his words. She blinked, a flicker of confusion. We've met? No, he said, his voice soft, thoughtful. But I remember people like you, people who don't need noise to matter, people whose presence speaks volumes, even in the absence of words. There was a beat of profound understanding, a deep resonance between their two souls, seemingly disparate yet profoundly connected. And then, softly, Haruko whispered, will you stay for a while? Just for a moment of genuine connection. Elias nodded, a silent affirmation. And for the first time that day, silence didn't feel like a battlefield, a place of tension and misunderstanding. It felt like peace, a quiet sanctuary where two souls, long accustomed to navigating the world's cacophony alone, had found an unexpected, profound resonance. The architecture of silence, he realized, when truly understood, could also be a bridge, connecting hearts in ways that words often failed. This was more than a chance encounter. It was the unfolding of a silent, powerful story. I want him removed immediately. Vivian Hayes's voice, usually a carefully modulated instrument of control, sliced through the opulent hallway like a shard of glass, sharp and brittle with barely contained fury. Her stilettos struck the polished marble with clipped, furious precision as she stalked towards the back corridor. Her assistant manager, Simon, a perpetually harried man with the air of a perpetually startled deer, trailing behind her like a shadow, desperately hoping to remain employed through sheer, utter silence. He knew better than to interrupt her escalating tirade. Ma'am, Simon began, his voice cautious, a mere breath of a word. The guest specifically requested. She requested service, Vivian snapped, whirling to face him for a fleeting, terrifying moment, her eyes blazing with an almost unhinged anger, not even glancing back as she continued her furious march. She didn't request some glorified janitor in a dusty uniform to perform kabuki theater in the lobby. This is a 5-star establishment, not a circus. Her words were a whip, lashing out at anything and anyone in her path. Inside the executive boardroom, a room usually reserved for the gravitas of multi-million-dollar decisions and the strategic plotting of corporate empires, the hotel's upper management sat frozen, a tableau of discomfort and thinly veiled panic. They had just been subjected to a 10-second video clip, now circulating online like wildfire, a digital testament to the morning's unexpected drama. It showed Elias Thorne, bowing with soft-voiced, profound respect, and Haruko Tanaka, a global titan of industry, accepting his invitation with a grace that defied her formidable reputation, a subtle smile touching her lips. The title of the trending video, a pithy summation that cut straight to the heart of Vivienne's escalating fury and exposed the hotel's cultural blindness. Read. The janitor who spoke her silence. "Do you know what this makes us look like?" Vivienne demanded, her voice rising to a dangerous crescendo as she slammed her iPad onto the boardroom table, the clatter echoing in the suddenly hushed room like a gunshot. Her face was a mask of furious indignation. "We have 3 certified translators on payroll, highly paid professionals. None of them could connect with her. And then a janitor from maintenance, a man whose job description is literally to clean up messes, walks up and makes us look like absolute fools." She spat the word fools with venomous contempt. The regional director, Mr. Chen, a man of quiet authority and considerable experience who rarely spoke unless absolutely necessary, cleared his throat lightly, a subtle ripple of dissent in the room. "Vivienne, with respect, it doesn't make us look like fools. It reveals that we already were. It exposes a systemic oversight, a blindness to genuine human connection in favor of rigid protocols." His words, delivered with quiet, unwavering conviction, landed with the weight of undeniable truth, causing a palpable shift in the room's atmosphere. Vivienne's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching ominously in her temple. Her carefully constructed facade of unflappable control was now visibly cracking, revealing the raw, exposed nerves and insecurity bubbling beneath her polished surface. The grand illusion she projected was unraveling. From the other side of the hotel, in a quiet side hall near the lounge, a secluded nook where the hotel's opulence softened into understated comfort, Elias stood alone in front of a vending machine, a moment of unexpected peace. He watched the slowly spinning bottle of green tea finally drop with a satisfying, metallic clunk, a small victory in a day filled with monumental shifts. He hadn't heard Haruko approach until her voice, soft, melodic, and surprisingly close, drifted beside him, a warm counterpoint to the sterile hum of the machine. "That machine is still selling Eton tea. I haven't seen that brand outside Tokyo in years. A small piece of home." Elias smiled, turning to hand her the bottle, his gaze gentle. "Well, this place likes to look international. Just don't ask if it's refrigerated. Corporate budget cuts, you know." He offered a wry, knowing glance. Haruko accepted the drink with a soft laugh, a rare, genuine sound that seemed to chase away the lingering tension of the morning, a lightness that transformed her formidable presence. "Thank you. For earlier. I don't know how else to say it. For everything." "You already did," Elias replied, his gaze warm, empathetic. "By being yourself, by trusting me." "I meant more than just the tea," she said, her eyes meeting his, holding his gaze with an intense, profound gratitude that transcended mere words. "You saved me from becoming someone's spectacle, from being reduced to a caricature of the difficult Asian executive they so clearly wanted to paint." He shook his head, a dismissive gesture that nonetheless conveyed a deep understanding. "You saved yourself, Haruko. I just translated the moment. I merely opened a door you were already trying to unlock." A comfortable, understanding pause stretched between them, imbued with the weight of shared experience and a dawning, unspoken intimacy. Haruko glanced out the tall lobby windows, where the city buzzed quietly beyond the glass, a chaotic, relentless symphony of urban life that felt miles away from their tranquil corner. "I'm used to being underestimated. I even count on it sometimes. It's a powerful strategic advantage. But that woman, Vivienne, she looked at me like I wasn't even human, like my very existence was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed." The underlying hurt in her voice was unmistakable, a raw, unexpected vulnerability. Elias's gaze followed hers, a shared understanding passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of the dehumanizing forces at play in such gilded cages. That's the thing about places like this. Polished surfaces, cold smiles, manufactured hospitality. Everything's about what people think you are. What role you're expected to play until you step outside the script. Until you demand to be seen as a person, not a category. Haruko turned back to him, her expression thoughtful, discerning, her eyes probing his with renewed intensity. "And you, Elias Thorne, you stepped far outside it. You defied their expectations, their rigid classifications." "I've been off script for years, Haruko," he said, a quiet weariness in his voice, a lifetime of disillusionment and quiet defiance contained in that simple statement. She tilted her head, a question in her eyes, an unspoken invitation for him to elaborate. "Why?" He hesitated, gathering his thoughts, then answered without drama, without self-pity, just a simple, profound statement of fact. Because silence became easier than defending the truth. Easier than explaining the unexplainable to a world that didn't want to listen. Her brow furrowed slightly, a silent invitation for him to continue, to unveil more of his guarded past. He did. After my wife, Emma, died, I had to raise Lily, my daughter, alone. I left the university, gave up a tenure-track position, took whatever job I could to provide stability and presence for her, however humble. But after a while, I realized something. His voice lowered, imbued with a quiet cynicism born of bitter experience. The world only respects knowledge, only values intelligence, when it comes in a three-piece suit and a PowerPoint presentation. A mop and a uniform render all previous accomplishments invisible. She said nothing, but the weight of his words seemed to settle onto her shoulders, like something she too had carried in her own silent battles. A profound burden of unacknowledged wisdom and unrecognized effort. It was a shared understanding that deepened the bond between them. Suddenly, Simon, the assistant manager, appeared at the end of the hallway, flustered and breathless, his face pale with frantic urgency. "Mr. Thorne," he said cautiously, his eyes darting frantically between Elias and Haruko. "Miss Hayes would like to speak with you urgently, immediately, in her office." The urgently was delivered with a desperate, almost pleading emphasis. Elias sighed, a sound of weary resignation. Of course she would. He knew what this meant. A reprimand, a warning, perhaps even a dismissal. Haruko stepped forward, her presence a silent, formidable barrier, her posture radiating an undeniable, unyielding power. "Mr. Thorne is currently assisting me," she stated calmly, her voice soft but imbued with an underlying steel that brooked no argument. "If Miss Hayes wishes to speak with him, she may schedule it after my meeting is complete. My time, and his, is currently occupied." The young man blinked, flustered, visibly torn between the imperious demands of his superior and the quiet, undeniable authority of a global billionaire. Yes, ma'am. I'll let her know." He turned and practically sprinted off, clearly terrified of incurring the wrath of either powerful woman, desperate to escape the crucible of their silent confrontation. Haruko looked at Elias, a faint, amused smile touching her lips, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "I may not raise my voice, Elias, but I've learned how to raise eyebrows, how to make my presence felt without resorting to aggression." "That," Elias said, a genuine, unburdened laugh escaping him, a rare sound of true joy, "was a master class, Haruko, a truly elegant deflection." Back in the boardroom, Vivienne paced like a shark smelling blood, her frustration reaching a fever pitch, her anger palpable. "She's redefining protocol," she hissed, her voice a low, dangerous growl. "A guest is not supposed to dictate staffing structure, especially when that staff member is maintenance. This is a complete breakdown of authority." The PR director, Sarah, a sleek, corporate woman with an innate sense of public sentiment, spoke up cautiously, her voice carefully modulated. "Actually, Miss Hayes, the footage is already being widely praised online. Words like dignity, grace, and cultural sensitivity are trending globally. The hotel's online engagement has spiked." Vivienne whirled, her eyes flashing with a cold, dismissive fury. "Trending doesn't sign our checks, Miss Davies. It doesn't fill our coffers. Neither does insulting a billionaire who is considering us for a major corporate summit," Mr. Chen muttered under his breath, a sentiment that resonated visibly with several other executives, though Vivienne pointedly ignored him, her focus entirely on the perceived threat to her authority. Meanwhile, Haruko and Elias returned to the lounge, a space that now felt almost like a private, shared haven. A tray of traditional Japanese sweets had been discreetly placed by a junior staffer, who clearly didn't want to be seen, retreating hastily after his task was complete. Elias offered her a manju, still warm and inviting, a small, sweet gesture of hospitality. She took it, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "Someone still has pride in service," she observed, a quiet appreciation in her tone. He sat down across from her again, the subtle aroma of the sweets mingling with the lingering fragrance of the tea. "You said earlier that words had become weapons," he began, his voice thoughtful. "But I've always believed they can be bridges, too. Tools for connection, for understanding." She nodded, a contemplative expression on her face. "Only if spoken from the right place, Elias, from a place of authenticity and respect, not manipulation or self-interest." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze earnest, seeking a deeper understanding. "Where do yours come from, Haruko? What is the wellspring of your profound silence, your quiet power?" Haruko blinked, her expression momentarily distant, contemplative, as if reaching deep into a guarded part of her soul. A place I haven't let many visit, Elias. A place of deep personal history. He held her gaze, a silent invitation in his eyes, a promise of safe harbor. May I be the exception? A moment of profound silence. No sound, no movement, just the quiet beating of two hearts in sync. Then softly, her voice imbued with a newfound vulnerability, she spoke. My father was a Buddhist craftsman, a master of wood and contemplation. He used to say, in silence, we remember who we are. In noise, we forget who we were meant to become. He taught me that true strength lies not in loudness, but in the depths of internal stillness. Elias exhaled slowly, a deep, understanding sound, a quiet resonance with her father's wisdom. That explains a lot, Haruko. It explains the profound self-possession I sensed in you. She smiled faintly, a hint of poignant sadness in her eyes. I lost him when I was 21. Cancer. But the day before he passed, he held my hand and said, Don't fear being misunderstood, my daughter. Fear becoming someone easy to understand. Fear losing the unique essence of who you are in the pursuit of external validation. Elias's throat tightened, a profound empathy washing over him, a deep connection to her grief and her father's wisdom. He would have liked you, Haruko. He would have seen you. Haruko looked away for a beat, her gaze distant, then turned back to him, a new question in her eyes, a tentative probing. Sometimes I wonder if he would have recognized me, Elias said quietly, a vulnerability in his tone, a raw admission of his own struggles with self-identity after loss. After everything changed, after I became the janitor, I often questioned if the man he knew still existed. He would have seen you long before anyone else did, she said, her voice gentle, reassuring, a balm to his aching soul. He would have seen the essence, the core of who you are, regardless of circumstance. She blinked hard, but didn't let the tears fall, a testament to her deep-seated control. Yet her eyes shone with an undeniable emotion. Then, without warning, Vivian Hayes entered the lounge, her presence an abrupt, jarring intrusion into their sacred sanctuary. Her face was set, her eyes narrowed, her entire demeanor radiating a cold, calculated fury. Mr. Thorne, she said sharply, her voice cutting, ignoring Haruko completely, as if she were an inconvenient ghost. I need to speak with you now. This instant. Elias stood slowly, his composure unwavering, meeting her imperious gaze with a quiet, unyielding strength. He glanced at Haruko, a silent question in his eyes. Can it wait, Miss Tanaka? I know, Vivian interrupted, her voice clipped, dismissive, her patience utterly depleted. This is a matter of professional boundaries, Mr. Thorne. Boundaries you seem to have forgotten. Haruko rose beside Elias, her presence radiating an undeniable, formidable power, an aura that dwarfed Vivian's aggressive bluster. Excuse me, Miss Hayes. Her voice, though soft, was imbued with an underlying steel that brooked no argument, a quiet command that drew all attention to her. Vivian turned, a fake, brittle smile plastered on her face, a desperate attempt to regain control. But her eyes were cold, filled with a furious resentment. Yes. You are addressing an employee who is currently in a private meeting with me, Haruko stated calmly, her gaze unwavering, holding Vivian's with an almost physical force. I suggest you choose your next words carefully, Miss Hayes. You are not only interrupting a private conversation, but demonstrating a profound lack of respect for both your staff and your guests. Vivian stiffened, her fake smile faltering, her face a war of conflicting emotions. I didn't mean to offend, Miss Tanaka, merely to uphold protocol. You didn't offend, Haruko said calmly, her gaze unwavering, penetrating. You revealed a systemic disregard for human connection, a profound lack of empathy, and a narrow definition of worth. And with that, she turned back to Elias, a subtle, powerful invitation in her eyes, a silent question. Shall we continue, Elias? He nodded, a silent act of defiance, a quiet affirmation of their shared understanding. Vivian stood frozen, her face a war of colors, anger, embarrassment, a dawning, terrifying realization of her miscalculation. And for the first time, in that opulent, yet profoundly human-filled room, it was crystal clear. The most powerful person wasn't the one in the expensive heels, clinging to a fading illusion of authority. It was the woman who had mastered the architecture of silence, and the janitor who had understood its profound blueprint, unraveling the grand illusion with quiet grace and unwavering integrity. on the other side of the hotel, behind closed glass doors that muffled the lobby's sounds but not its frantic energy, Vivian Hayes was pacing again, a caged tiger in a meticulously decorated cage. "They're still together," she snapped, her voice a tight knot of fury, peering through the grainy security camera feed on her tablet. "Yes, ma'am," a staffer named Julian said meekly from behind her, his voice barely audible, confirming the unthinkable. "Still in the tea lounge. For an hour. An hour and 14 minutes, he reiterated, dread evident in his tone, as if counting the seconds of her impending doom. Vivian whirled to face the hotel's PR manager, Sarah, a perpetually stressed woman with an impeccable corporate veneer. "This is going to spiral if we don't control the narrative, Sarah. It's already a disaster." "The narrative, Miss Hayes," Sarah said slowly, carefully choosing her words, each one a sharp dart of inconvenient truth, "is that a janitor de-escalated a culturally sensitive crisis with grace and fluency, while the management specifically, you nearly called security on a billionaire, a prominent global figure." The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. Vivian's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching visibly in her temple. Her face was a canvas of furious indignation and dawning horror. "It's already gone viral," Sarah added, her voice flat, devoid of emotion, like a pronouncement of doom. "And guests are asking for Elias Thorne by name at check-in. They want to know if he's on duty. The media is swarming, Miss Hayes." Vivian's voice dropped, cold and lethal, a whisper of absolute power trying desperately to reassert itself. "He's not a guest. He's not a spokesman. He's not even qualified to clean the penthouse floor without supervision. This is an insult to our brand, our professionalism." The PR rep raised an eyebrow, a flicker of defiance in her eyes, a rare crack in her professional facade. "And yet, Miss Hayes, he might be the only person who's making this hotel look human. Look authentic right now. His actions have brought a warmth to our reputation that millions in marketing couldn't buy." Vivian's lips thinned into a hard, uncompromising line, a venomous slash of crimson. She didn't just see a janitor anymore. She saw a threat, a direct, existential threat to her authority, to her meticulously constructed empire of control, and most importantly, to her executive bonus, her reputation, and her entire career. The cost of her silence, her inability to listen, was now becoming terrifyingly clear. The photo hit the internet before Elias even made it back to the janitor's closet. A grainy snapshot, taken by a hotel guest with a discreet phone camera, showed Haruko Tanaka seated in the tea lounge, a soft, genuine, almost vulnerable smile gracing her lips, as Elias Thorne poured her tea with the unhurried precision of a diplomat, his head slightly bowed. No translation device, no anxious assistant, just two people, face to face, connected in a moment of perfect mutual respect, a tableau of quiet dignity. Within an hour, the image had over 300,000 shares. Within 2, it was trending globally on Twitter as #TheJanitor listened. The caption that went viral, an eloquent and damning summation from the same hotel guest who had quietly filmed part of the earlier interaction, encapsulated the entire saga. While managers panicked, a janitor connected. "We don't need more executives. We need more Eliases." Vivian Hayes slammed her laptop shut so hard the ceramic cup beside it rattled precariously, the sound of violent punctuation marked to her rage. "Tell me this is being contained. Jessica," she hissed, her voice a low snarl directed at the young digital communications lead, her face contorted with fury. "Tell me you're getting this under control." Jessica, a young woman whose face was now pale with terror, swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "We're trying, Miss Hayes, but the media's calling relentlessly. CNN, Nikkei Asia, Good Morning America. They want to interview him. Him? He's a janitor," Vivian shrieked, her control finally snapping, her voice echoing shrilly in the executive suite. "He's a cleaner, not a spokesperson. This is beyond ridiculous." Jessica didn't respond, but her silence, this time, spoke volumes, a powerful, unspoken indictment. It was a silence that acknowledged the inconvenient truth, the undeniable power of Elias's authentic actions. Vivian spun towards Simon, the assistant general manager, her eyes burning with a cold, desperate fury. "Do you realize what this means, Simon? He hijacked our brand narrative. He made us look like we failed at basic hospitality, at human decency, while he stood there polishing glassware and playing cultural savior. This is an executive nightmare." "He didn't play anything, Miss Hayes," Simon said carefully, his voice surprisingly steady, a quiet courage in his tone, a rare moment of defiance. He just did the right thing. He acted with humanity. Vivian turned on him, her anger a palpable, suffocating force. No one hired him to be the right thing, Simon. We hired him to mop floors, to be invisible, to be a silent, obedient cog in the machine of luxury service. And then, in the pause that followed, she articulated the part no one dared to say out loud, the true core of her fear, the naked self-interest that drove her every action. If this gets out of hand, we'll become the hotel where a janitor outshone management, where the staff became more respected than the executives. And that, Simon, is not the kind of publicity that preserves executive bonuses or my position. The unspoken truth hung in the air, thick with a smell of ambition, insecurity, and the chilling realization that her carefully constructed world was teetering on the brink. Elias stood alone in the staff break room, the buzz of the fluorescent light humming above him like a tired, flickering engine, a discordant note in the quiet. In his hand was a printed email from corporate HR. Short, blunt, sterile, devoid of any human empathy. Subject: Employee Conduct Review, Mr. Thorne. Asterisk, Dear Mr. Thorne. Asterisk, due to recent public exposure and deviation from assigned duties, a formal internal review has been initiated. Until the matter is resolved, please refrain from further guest interaction beyond your cleaning responsibilities. Your cooperation in maintaining professional boundaries is expected during this time of internal assessment. Asterisk, regards. Asterisk. Asterisk, Staff Oversight Committee. Asterisk. He folded the paper once, then again, with precise, almost surgical movements, until it was a small, tightly creased square, small enough to disappear into his fist, a crumpling of hope, a physical manifestation of the crushing weight of institutional dismissal. Should have seen that coming, he murmured to himself, the words a bitter whisper that tasted of resignation and a familiar disillusionment. The door creaked open behind him, a welcome intrusion. It was Marcus, the night concierge, a man with kind, world-weary eyes and a ready smile. He was one of the few staff members who still remembered, or chose to remember, that Elias once wore a blazer instead of a name badge, a subtle recognition of the man beneath the uniform. They're panicking, Elias, Marcus said quietly, his gaze sympathetic, his voice low. Vivian's about to lose it completely. She's threatening to fire half the PR department. Elias didn't turn around, his gaze fixed on the wall, on the faint stain left by a forgotten coffee cup. Because I spoke Japanese to a guest. No, Marcus replied, his voice firm, unwavering. Because you reminded everyone what real service looks like, Elias. What humanity looks like in this soulless place. There was a silence between them, an old one, heavy with everything they'd seen and understood over years of invisible labor, years of being overlooked and undervalued. You okay? Marcus asked, his concern genuine, cutting through the layers of Elias's stoicism. I'm fine, Elias lied, the word tasting like ash in his mouth, a hollow echo in the small room. Marcus stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Elias's shoulder. You've got people pulling for you, Elias. Guests are asking for you by name. Staff are whispering about you like you're some kind of legend, a quiet hero. I'm not a legend, Marcus, Elias said flatly, the fatigue evident in his voice, the weight of the spotlight heavy on him. I'm a man with a mop who forgot to keep his head down, a man who made the mistake of being seen. Marcus lowered his voice, his eyes holding Elias's with a profound understanding. Or maybe you're a man who remembered he still had a voice, Elias. A voice that needed to be heard, even if it was in a language no one else understood. Elias's jaw tensed, a flicker of pain crossing his features. Doesn't matter. HR wants silence again. They want me back in my box, invisible. Marcus stepped back, a sigh escaping him, a shared resignation. For what it's worth. She saw you, Haruko Tanaka. I think she saw all of you. The professor, the father, the man underneath the uniform. Elias looked down at the crumpled HR paper in his fist, then nodded slowly, a profound understanding dawning. That's the part that scares me the most, Marcus. Being seen. Truly seen. After so long, it's terrifying. The digital echo of his kindness had brought him into the harsh, unwelcome light, and he wasn't sure he was ready for what it would reveal. The cost of silence, for him, had always been invisibility. Now, the cost of being seen might be even higher. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Elias returned to the lobby with a mop in his hand and a heavy, almost suffocating silence in his chest. The chatter in the hotel hadn't stopped. If anything, it had grown louder, infused with a new, excited hum, a current of curiosity that now centered on him. So much so that guests, who usually glided past him without a second glance, now turned to look, not with disdain, but with curiosity, with something akin to respect, their gazes lingering. He hated it, deeply. He knew how fragile that respect was, how fleeting. Respect, built on viral clips and trending hashtags, wasn't real. It was applause with a time limit, a transient spotlight that would inevitably dim, leaving him once again in the shadows, perhaps more profoundly invisible than before. The weight of their gazes felt like an unbearable burden. Vivienne met him near the elevators, her presence a cold, imposing wall. Her arms were crossed, her posture like a general waiting for a defiant soldier to surrender. Her lips thinned into a severe, crimson line. "Mr. Thorne," she said crisply, her voice brittle, cutting through the ambient noise. "I trust you've received the notice from HR." "I did," Elias replied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, his eyes fixed on a point just beyond her shoulder. "Then you understand the consequences of continued deviation from your assigned duties and professional boundaries." "I do." The simple, stark reply held no subservience, merely a statement of grim understanding. She smiled thinly, a cruel, triumphant curve of her lips that barely touched her eyes. "Good. Then we won't have any more confusion about roles, will we, Mr. Thorne? You are a janitor. Nothing more, nothing less." The implication was clear. He was to return to his place, silent and unseen. But just as Elias was about to nod, a gesture of weary resignation, and walk away, to retreat into his carefully constructed invisibility, a voice, calm and resonant, echoed behind them, imbued with an undeniable authority that cut through Vivienne's triumphant smugness. "No, Miss Hayes, we will have clarity, but not the kind you think." They both turned, startled. Haruko Tanaka stood at the far end of the corridor, poised and resolute, her navy coat a striking silhouette against the hotel's opulent backdrop. She walked towards them, each step deliberate, measured, imbued with an unwavering purpose, as if she were stepping onto a stage she owned completely. "Miss Tanaka," Vivienne stammered, her carefully constructed mask of composure slipping precariously into place, forced and fragile, as surprise and fear warred on her face. "We were just discussing the unfortunate misunderstanding earlier regarding Mr. Thorne's actions." "There was no misunderstanding, Miss Hayes," Haruko interrupted calmly, her gaze unwavering, cutting through Vivienne's platitudes like a sharpened blade. Her voice was soft, yet it resonated with an undeniable power, a quiet command that drew all attention to her. "Only a failure of character." Vivienne blinked, her face blanching, then flushing with a furious, indignant red. "Excuse me." Haruko's voice remained steady, unyielding, her eyes holding Vivienne's with an iron will. "You mistook silence for weakness, Miss Hayes, and you mistook uniform for worth. These are fundamental errors of perception that are unacceptable in an establishment of this caliber." Vivienne sputtered, regaining a sliver of her composure. "This is an internal staff matter, Miss Tanaka. It does not concern you." "Incorrect," Haruko said, holding her gaze with an unwavering intensity, her presence dominating the space. "This is a matter of human dignity, Miss Hayes, and that concerns everyone who steps foot into this hotel." She then turned fully to Elias, her eyes softening, a profound invitation in her gaze. "Mr. Thorne, would you walk with me?" He hesitated for a moment, a profound choice laid before him. Retreat into the expected silence, or step forward into the unknown, into this unexpected alliance. He met Haruko's gaze, saw the unwavering trust there, and nodded, a quiet defiance in his posture. He left the mop leaning against the wall, a silent symbol of his designated place, now abandoned. As they walked down the hallway side by side, a striking tableau of unexpected alliance, of a billionaire executive and a hotel janitor, moving with a shared purpose, Haruko spoke quietly, her voice a low murmur, meant only for his ears. "They can't stand that you didn't beg for credit, Elias, that you didn't capitalize on the moment for personal gain. It confuses their worldview." Elias smiled faintly, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Let them stew. I didn't do it for them. I did it because it was the right thing to do. For you, for Emma, for Lily." "I know," she replied, a subtle warmth in her voice, a deepening of their connection. "That's what makes it so powerful. That's what they can't comprehend." They walked in silence, but it was the kind of silence that didn't shrink a man. It lifted him. It affirmed him. It was a testament to a different kind of value, one that transcended titles and uniforms, a value rooted in authenticity and human connection. It was nearly midnight when Elias finally walked through the door of his modest apartment, the familiar click of the lock a comforting sound. The lights in the kitchen were still on, casting a soft, golden hue over the worn countertop and the small stack of dishes in the sink. The faint, comforting scent of lavender and lemon lingered in the air. Lily had cleaned up again without being asked, a gesture of small, fierce love. She was always trying to take care of him, a burden too heavy for a 10-year-old. "Dad," her voice called from the bedroom, sleepy yet clear, a thread of worry in her tone. "Not sleepy, waiting." "I'm home, sweetheart," he answered gently, his voice softening immediately, shedding the day's tensions. Lily appeared a moment later in the hallway, wrapped in her favorite worn blanket, her hair tousled, her eyes sharp with sleep and a child's unwavering perception. "You were on the internet," she said flatly, her voice devoid of judgment, just stating a fact. Elias blinked, a weary sigh escaping him. "I was what?" "Lily showed me," she clarified, referring to her best friend. "Her mom watches the news during dinner. You're everywhere. They're saying you're a hero." He sighed again, sitting down on the old blue couch, its familiar springs groaning in protest. "Yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen, sweetheart. Just a normal day gone. Sideways." Lily patted over and sat beside him, curling up like a small, protective cat, her head resting against his arm, her warmth a solace. "They're saying you spoke Japanese to a billionaire and saved the hotel," she said, looking up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and concern. "Is that true?" He didn't answer right away, instead pulling her closer, burying his face in her soft hair. "Do you remember when I told you that sometimes doing the right thing makes the wrong people angry?" She nodded solemnly, her small face serious. "Yes." "Well," he said, a wry twist to his lips, "today was definitely one of those days." Lily was quiet for a while, absorbing his words, her small mind processing the complexities of adult life, the unfairness of it all. "Then are they going to fire you?" The question hit harder than it should have, a direct stab at his deepest fear, the vulnerability of their precarious life. But Elias didn't flinch. He met her gaze directly. "I don't know yet, Lily Bug," he said, his voice honest, unwavering. She leaned her head against his arm again, her blanket a soft, comforting barrier between them and the harshness of the world. "Why do people get mad when someone's kind, Dad?" He stared at the worn carpet on the floor, searching for the right words, the simple truth. "Because kindness makes arrogance feel small, sweetheart. It exposes their own lack." She tilted her head, her gaze still fixed on him, profound beyond her years. "But that's not your fault." "No," he whispered, "but it makes me the nearest target. It challenges the order they've built." A long silence stretched between them, comfortable in its intimacy, heavy with the weight of unspoken fears and boundless love. Then, almost like a whisper, Lily asked, her voice barely audible, "Is being good always this hard?" Elias's throat tightened, a lump forming there. He kissed the top of her head, the scent of her hair, shampoo and childhood, filling him, grounding him. "Yes, my love," he whispered. "It often is. But it's also what makes you truly strong, what makes you you." Later that night, when she was finally asleep, tucked snugly into her bed, Elias sat alone at the kitchen table, a cup of cold tea by his elbow and a pen in his hand. The quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. He pulled out a sheet of paper, real paper, its surface textured beneath his fingers, and began to write slowly, thoughtfully, the words flowing from his heart. "Lily, one day you'll be old enough to ask me not just what I did, but why I did it. I want to answer that question now, while the memory still stings and the truth is still warm within me. When people talk about courage, they usually picture someone loud, bold, demanding, charging into battle. But what I've learned, my sweet girl, is that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply to stay kind in a room that expects you to harden, to remain gentle when the world demands you be cruel. Today, I saw a woman being erased with smiles, dismissed with polite contempt. I've seen that look before when someone pretends you're not there because acknowledging you would mean they have to treat you like a human being, with respect and empathy. I stepped forward because I've been on the receiving end of that silence too many times, that intentional invisibility, that judgment. And if I've learned anything from raising you, from watching your quiet strength blossom, it's this. We don't need the world's permission to do what's right. We just need the will to do it anyway, even when our voice shakes, even when we're afraid. You once told me that my work smells like lemon and kindness. I hope, with all my heart, that it always does. That I always carry that essence, no matter what uniform I wear, no matter what floor I clean. Love, Dad. He folded the letter with care and tucked it into a small, worn envelope marked with her name, placing it gently in his bedside drawer, next to a faded photo of Emma. One day she would need it. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for years. But when the world tried to convince her that being quiet meant being small, but kindness was weakness, she would remember that her father changed a room, and perhaps an entire hotel, by saying almost nothing and meaning everything. This was a different kind of value, a different kind of power, and it was slowly, irrevocably, changing everything around him, shaping a future he could not yet fully see. The next morning, Elias arrived at the Grand Imperial Hotel earlier than usual. He craved the silence before the lobby filled with the clacking heels of executives and the eager calls of bellboys, before the incessant emails and inevitable HR meetings and corrosive hallway whispers began their daily assault. He stepped into the janitor's closet. The familiar smell of disinfectant and clean linens a strange, almost poignant comfort. Inside, taped to the metal door of his locker, was a photo of Lily at age 6, missing her front teeth, chocolate smeared on her cheek, holding a handmade Best Dad Ever award scribbled in crayon. He smiled, a genuine, private smile that touched only his eyes, a brief, anchoring moment of pure love. Then, with a practiced, almost robotic motion, he reached for his mop. Just as he stepped into the hallway, Marcus, the night concierge, caught up with him, his breath short from hurrying, a look of urgent concern on his face. "Hey, Elias," Marcus whispered, his voice low, conspiratorial. "They're meeting right now. Executive board, the whole 9 yards. Vivian looks like she's about to explode. I heard they've called corporate, flying in the regional director." Elias sighed, a sound of weary resignation, a familiar weight settling on his shoulders. "I figured." He had anticipated this. The institutional response to anything that disrupted the established order was always swift and unyielding. "You okay?" Marcus asked, his concern palpable, genuine. "I will be," Elias said, the words a quiet promise to himself, a mantra against the encroaching anxiety. "What about Haruko? Is she still in the royal suite?" "She's still there," Marcus replied, lowering his voice further, glancing around cautiously. "But she's quiet, Elias. Very quiet. Not like she's hiding, though. More like she's focused, planning something bigger than all of us, like a chess grandmaster before a decisive move." Elias nodded, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his eyes. "That wouldn't surprise me, Marcus. Not at all." He understood that kind of silence. It was the calm before the storm, the deep breath before the plunge. Marcus looked him dead in the eye, his gaze unwavering, imbued with a quiet pride and conviction. "You're not alone, man. Everyone down here, Elias. Maintenance, housekeeping, kitchen staff, we're behind you. You gave us something none of us had in years, something this hotel tried to take away." "What's that, Marcus?" Elias asked, his voice soft, genuinely curious. Marcus's voice was firm, imbued with a quiet dignity. "Proof we mattered. Proof that our work, our presence, our humanity is seen. That we're more than just uniforms and job descriptions." The words resonated deeply, a powerful affirmation in the face of the impending corporate storm. Upstairs, in the opulent boardroom, Vivian Hayes stood at the head of the polished, impossibly long table, flanked by department heads, senior partners, and the formidable Mr. Chen, the regional director, who had flown in overnight. Her face was a mask of cold resolve, her anger simmering beneath a thin veneer of control. "This has gone far enough," she said, her voice clipped and cold, each word a sharp, definitive pronouncement. "Mr. Thorne's behavior, however well-intentioned, has created a disruptive narrative. A rogue employee has hijacked our brand image. We need to reassert control over the hotel's brand before this becomes a precedent, before other staff members get ideas about exceeding their station." The unspoken fear was palpable. If a janitor could command such attention, what did that say about their own diminishing authority? The room shifted uncomfortably, a collective ripple of unease. Mr. Davies, one of the more seasoned executives, cleared his throat cautiously. "With respect, Vivienne, the guest in question, Ms. Tanaka, has not filed any complaint. Quite the opposite, in fact. She's praised his conduct publicly and quite emphatically. And bookings have increased 12% since yesterday," Sarah, the PR director, added, her voice carefully neutral, though her eyes held a glint of quiet triumph. We're receiving an unprecedented number of emails from international clients asking if Mr. Thorne still works here. Many are specifically requesting our culturally sensitive service. Vivian's lips thinned into a hard, unyielding line, a venomous slash of crimson. We cannot run a luxury establishment on sentiment, Miss Davies. We run it on profit and rigid adherence to protocol. Her voice rose, dangerously close to a shriek. This is an internal issue, a matter of maintaining hierarchy. Just then, the heavy double doors of the boardroom opened with a soft, almost imperceptible whoosh, and Haruko Tanaka stepped in. Her entrance was silent, yet commanding, drawing every eye in the room. Without a word, she walked to the very center of the table, her presence radiating an undeniable, formidable power that instantly dwarfed Vivian's aggressive bluster. She placed her phone, a sleek, minimalist device, on the gleaming surface of the table. A voice recording began to play Vivian's voice from the lobby the previous day, clear, amplified, and damning. This is America, ma'am. If you want service here, speak English. We don't have time for guessing games and silent treatment. We didn't hire staff to perform kabuki theater for billionaires. Silence. A profound, suffocating silence descended upon the room, broken only by the faint whir of the projector. The executives sat rigid, their faces a mixture of shock, horror, and dawning realization. Then Haruko turned off the recording and looked up, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces, unwavering, uncompromising. I gave you a chance to correct the record, Miss Hayes, she said evenly, her voice devoid of anger, yet infused with an undeniable, chilling power. You chose to pretend nothing happened. You chose to ignore the truth. Vivian stammered, her face a furious, mottled red, her eyes wide with panic. You recorded that without my... You were in a public space, Miss Hayes, Haruko interjected calmly, her gaze unwavering, holding Vivian's with an almost physical force, surrounded by witnesses, including your own staff, and I believe in documenting moments of profound revelation. She then turned her gaze to the other executives, her voice gaining a quiet, formidable strength, imbued with the authority of absolute conviction. I came here to evaluate this hotel as a long-term partner for our Global Tech Summit, a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 5 years. But what I found was not the exemplary service you claim. I found a culture of assumption, of thinly veiled contempt, of rigid hierarchy that stifles humanity. And, ironically, I found one man, a janitor brave enough to speak humanity into a room full of protocol and corporate posturing. She paused, letting her words sink in, allowing the full weight of her statement to settle. I will not cancel the summit. The location is strategically vital, but I will attach my company's name and considerable investment only to institutions that recognize value beyond a title, beyond a uniform, beyond superficial metrics. Institutions that understand the true meaning of service. And then she said 5 words that changed everything, 5 words that resonated with the force of an undeniable, unshakable truth, sealing Vivian Hayes' fate and redefining the hotel's future. Elias Thorne is that standard. The ballroom at the Royal Grand Hotel had never been this full. Not during holiday galas, not during celebrity weddings, and certainly not for a press conference called by a reclusive billionaire who steadfastly refused to say why until the very last moment. Rows of media cameras lined the velvet rope, their lenses gleaming like hungry, expectant eyes. Reporters whispered, shifted restlessly in their seats, their notebooks poised, unsure of what theatrical spectacle or corporate bombshell they were about to witness. The podium stood empty, stark and simple. No sponsor banners, no scripted background, just a single, powerful line projected behind it in elegant white letters against a stark black backdrop. Asterisk, sometimes silence is the loudest truth. Backstage, Elias adjusted the stiff collar of his freshly laundered, albeit worn, work shirt. Still no tie, still no suit. He'd refused both, a quiet act of defiance, a statement of his unwavering authenticity. He wasn't here to play a role. He was here because Haruko had asked him one simple question that morning, a question that cut through all the noise and the corporate machinations. Asterisk, would you stand beside me, Elias, not as a symbol, but as yourself? Now she stood beside him, as calm and composed as ever, adjusting the sleeves of her ivory blazer with elegant, almost ritualistic precision, her presence radiating a quiet power that filled the small, backstage room. You don't need to speak, Elias, Haruko said quietly, her voice a soft murmur of reassurance, her eyes meeting his with profound understanding. Your presence is enough. I want to, Elias replied, his voice firm, a new resolve strengthening his tone. Not for them, but for all the others. For Lily. For Emma. She looked at him, a flicker of pride in her gaze. You don't owe them anything, you know. I know, he said, meeting her gaze, his eyes holding a lifetime of stories. But maybe they need to hear it anyway. Maybe the truth needs a voice, even if it's a quiet one. Haruko nodded once, a brief, decisive movement. Then, with an innate, almost majestic grace, she stepped onto the stage. The camera flashes started immediately, a blinding, staccato burst of light, like 1,000 tiny explosions. She walked with the deliberate elegance of someone who knew exactly who she was, who had shed the need for external validation, and who no longer needed to prove it to anyone. She reached the podium, looked over the expectant crowd, and said nothing. 30 seconds passed, an eternity in media time. Then 60. Reporters exchanged puzzled glances, their whispers growing louder. Was there a technical issue? Was this some avant-garde protest? But Haruko just stood there, her silence not empty, but profound, weighted like an ancient stone, radiating an unyielding presence. Then she bowed deeply. Not a casual nod, but a full, reverent Japanese bow, an asterisk Kerr-style asterisk bow reserved for moments of solemn gratitude or profound apology. A gesture of respect that transcended language. Gasps flooded through the room like leaves caught in a sudden, unexpected gust of wind. Then she stepped aside, gesturing towards Elias. Elias walked up to the podium slowly, deliberately, like every footstep had to earn its right, each one carrying the weight of his journey. He looked out at the crowd, the blinding lights of the media cameras, the sea of expectant faces. No notes, no teleprompter, just a man in worn work shoes, standing under the hot lights, trying to speak for every person who had ever been seen last, if at all. My name is Elias Thorne, he said, his voice steady, resonant, carrying to the back of the enormous room. I cleaned floors for a living. A few murmurs rippled through the audience, pens scratching on paper, capturing the unexpected declaration. I used to teach languages, studied silence. Then life happened, and silence became my job description, my shield. A soft, understanding laughter, tinged with recognition, rippled through the back rows. He continued, his voice gaining strength, conviction. Yesterday, I watched someone powerful get dismissed, not because she was wrong, not because she lacked intellect, but because she refused to perform on someone else's terms, because she chose silence over noise. I've been on that end of things. Some of you, I suspect, have too. A profound hush fell over the room, an almost sacred stillness as his words struck a chord of universal experience. I didn't step forward because I was brave, he said, his gaze sweeping over the faces in the crowd, connecting with them. I stepped forward because I recognized the look in her eyes, the profound dignity, the quiet defiance. He looked over at Haruko, who stood quietly beside the podium, her presence a silent testament. That look we get when the world tells us we don't belong in rooms we paid to enter, in conversations we deserve to be a part of, that silent dismissal that cuts deeper than any insult. Someone in the audience clapped once, a lone, resonant sound, quickly joined by a few more. Then the room grew still again, listening intently, captivated by the raw honesty. I didn't offer a statement. I offered a cup of tea. I spoke her language, not to impress her, not to prove my credentials, but to remind her she wasn't alone. To remind her that some people still listen, still care. Elias took a breath, a deep, cleansing breath, imbued with the weight of his truth. And in return, she reminded me I still had a voice worth using, a voice worth hearing. He stepped back from the microphone, and Haruko stepped forward once more. This time, she spoke in flawless, perfectly nuanced English, every word clear, precise, and powerful. I have done 100 interviews in my career, she began, her voice clear and strong, resonating with a newfound confidence. Every time, I'm expected to smile, to pitch, to please, to conform to an expectation. But not today. She scanned the room, her gaze piercing, unwavering. Today, I'm not here as a CEO. I'm here as a woman who watched a man with a mop do what a room full of experts, of highly educated professionals, could not. He did what this hotel, in its pursuit of luxury, forgot how to do. Her voice didn't rise, it didn't tremble, but it carried with the force of thunder wrapped in silk, echoing with an undeniable truth. He didn't see a language barrier. He saw me. He saw a human being. Haruko paused, then held up a small photo, the now famous image of Elias bowing slightly as he offered her tea, a moment of quiet dignity captured forever. This photo has been shared over 12 million times, she said. her voice resonating with quiet power. But what matters isn't just the image. It's what you didn't see, what was ignored. She looked at the reporters, her voice sharpening just slightly, a hint of steel entering her tone. You didn't see how many people rolled their eyes when I chose silence. You didn't see the smirks, the dismissals, the measured cruelty wrapped in saccharine customer service smiles. You didn't see the systemic disrespect. She lowered the photo, her gaze unwavering, direct. And you didn't see Elias's hand tremble when he bowed, because it didn't. He met my silence with strength, not fear. With empathy, not judgment. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of leadership I want in every boardroom I walk into. That is the true standard of human connection. Applause broke out this time, thunderous, spontaneous, louder than anything the Royal Grand Ballroom had ever witnessed, rising, spreading like an unstoppable tide through the room. Haruko waited until it softened, then looked out once more, her eyes shining. There's one last thing I'd like to share, she said, her voice quiet again, intimate. Something I've never said on any stage, something very personal. She turned slightly, looking at Elias, her eyes warm with affection and profound gratitude. Mr. Thorne, would you allow me to read something you wrote? He nodded, unsure, a lump forming in his throat, his heart pounding in his chest. She reached into her pocket and unfolded a piece of paper. It was his letter to Lily. Her voice, steady and clear, filled the room, imbued with the raw emotion of his words. Lily, one day you'll be old enough to ask me not just what I did, but why I did it. We don't need the world's permission to do what's right. We just need the will to do it anyway, even when our voice shakes, even when we're afraid. A profound silence fell that no one dared break, deeper and more powerful than any noise. Elias's chest tightened, a wave of overwhelming emotion washing over him. She looked at him again, her eyes warm, filled with profound understanding and respect, a silent promise. She's lucky to have you, Elias, Haruko whispered. The words meant only for him, a sacred sharing. He swallowed hard, tears blurring his vision. I'm the lucky one, he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. The press conference ended not with a slogan, not with a marketing spin, but with two people, a billionaire and a janitor, bowing to each other, a profound, mutual acknowledgement of shared humanity and respect. And in that room of power suits and camera flashes, dignity stood taller than branding, authenticity shone brighter than any polished facade. Elias Thorne, the janitor, had become the standard, a living testament to a different kind of value that had long been overlooked, a silent truth that had finally roared. Hours later, in a small, unpretentious cafe 2 blocks from the Grand Imperial Hotel, the city's frantic energy a distant hum, Elias and Haruko sat side by side. No cameras, no eager audience, just the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the quiet, easy hum of a neighborhood establishment. Haruko glanced at him over the rim of her cup, a faint, genuine smile playing on her lips. You didn't have to let me read that letter, Elias. It was so personal. I know, he said, his voice soft, a quiet vulnerability in his tone. But maybe the world needed to know I'm not just a janitor, that there's more beneath the surface, that we all have stories. You never were just a janitor, Elias, she said quietly, her eyes holding his with a profound, knowing depth. You just stopped correcting them. You allowed yourself to be diminished by their labels. He smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, a lightness he hadn't felt in years. Will you go back, she asked, her voice gentle, probing. To teaching, to academia. He looked down at his coffee, stirring it thoughtfully, watching the cream swirl into dark patterns. I don't know. The world feels different now. I feel different. Maybe, Haruko said softly, her voice filled with a quiet wisdom. The world just finally caught up to who you've always been, to the truth of you. They sat in silence for a long time, a comfortable, companionable silence that felt less like an absence and more like a profound presence. And for once, it wasn't the kind of silence that hid pain. It was the kind that followed truth. The kind that lingered because something real had been said, something profound had shifted within their souls. The elevator inside Whitaker Tower, Haruko's corporate headquarters, barely made a sound. No ding, no lurch, just a smooth, sterile glide to the 42nd floor. Elias stood alone inside, his reflection multiplying in the mirrored walls, a transient phantom in a world of glass and steel. He'd swapped his usual work shirt for a clean button-up and an old corduroy jacket that still smelled faintly of his wife Emma's favorite cologne. He hadn't worn it in years, the scent a ghost of a past life. The doors opened with a soft whoosh onto an expanse of polished chrome and glass. A sleekly dressed receptionist, an embodiment of corporate efficiency, gestured without speaking towards a private conference room. The entire office gleamed like a pristine jewelry box, a temple of silence and ambition. Elias Thorne, the janitor, stepped into the lion's den. Haruko was waiting in the private conference room, backlit by a colossal wall of floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked half the city, a breathtaking panorama of power and progress. She didn't rise when he entered. No handshake, no polite smile. Her expression was neutral, professional, yet her eyes held a spark of something unreadable. "You asked to see me, Elias," she said, her hands folded precisely on the polished table, her voice calm, direct. Elias nodded and sat in the chair opposite her, feeling a familiar tension, a subtle challenge. "I figured if you're going to put your company's name on me, on my standard as you called it, you should at least know mine, the real one." She tilted her head, a silent invitation to continue, her gaze unwavering. "Go on." "My name is Elias Thorne," he began, his voice steady, unflinching. "Former linguistics professor, father, widower, current janitor, and thanks to you, temporary internet meme. A man who has learned the hard way about the value of being seen." She didn't laugh, but a flicker of something, perhaps genuine amusement or deep recognition, crossed her face, quickly suppressed. "Why did you agree to speak for me, Elias? Why risk your job, your livelihood, for a stranger?" "Because silence isn't the absence of words, Haruko," he said, his gaze direct, profound. "It's the presence of meaning. It's a language in itself. And what you did yesterday, at that conference, with your silence and then your powerful words, it meant something. Something vital." A flicker crossed her face, a fleeting moment of vulnerability, but she hit it fast, her control impeccable. "You went viral, Elias," she said, her tone clipped, almost accusatory, a subtle test. "Do you know what that means? The media frenzy, the scrutiny, the inevitable backlash." "I know what it feels like," Elias replied, a wry twist to his lips, a profound weariness in his eyes. "Feels like being lit up for 10 seconds, then tossed back into darkness with your eyes still adjusting. A fleeting moment of relevance before the world moves on. A painful kind of visibility." Haruko's expression cracked, just a hairline fracture, but it was enough to reveal the human beneath the formidable exterior. "I know what they're saying," she said, her voice dropping, a vulnerability creeping into her tone. "I've heard the backlash from my own board. They're watching me like a malfunctioning asset, questioning my judgment, my leadership. They see this as a dangerous deviation." He leaned in, his voice gentle, empathetic. "Is that what you think, Haruko? That this is just a brand crisis for you?" "No," she said flatly, her gaze unwavering, profound. "I think it's a mirror held up to every boardroom, every executive, every person who believes power comes from noise and titles." That gave Elias pause, a quiet understanding dawning within him. Haruko continued, her voice gaining a quiet strength. "People didn't applaud because I said something profound, Elias. They applauded because you did something inconveniently decent. You reminded them of a humanity they've learned to ignore, a kindness they've forgotten." Elias met her gaze, a profound resonance between them. "And that scares them?" "No," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "That asterisk shames them. It exposes their own emptiness, their own lack of genuine connection." They sat in silence again, a different kind of silence this time, a silence of shared truth, of two souls recognizing their intertwined journeys. Then Haruko broke it, her voice dropping half an octave, imbued with a deep, personal resonance, an unveiling. "There's something I haven't told anyone, Elias, not even Kenji." Elias didn't move, sensing the profound confession about to unfold, the unraveling of another tightly held secret. "I was 6 the first time I refused to speak. Truly refused. I was sent to an elite prep school in Tokyo. A world of strict rules and unfamiliar faces. I didn't understand a word anyone said for the first month. I tried. God, I tried. But every time I opened my mouth, I heard my difference echo back at me. My clumsiness, my embarrassment, my profound inability to fit in. The teachers, misunderstanding, praised my silence, called it disciplined focus, so I just stopped trying." She looked down, her gaze distant, lost in the corridors of memory. "That silence followed me to Harvard, to boardrooms, to bedrooms. I learned to use it as armor, a way to protect myself from further misunderstanding, further hurt." Elias's voice was gentle, filled with empathy. But armor gets heavy, Haruko, and suffocating. She nodded, a faint, sad smile on her lips. And lonely. Profoundly lonely. Why? Tell me this, Elias, she asked, her voice a soft, almost desperate plea for understanding. Why are you the only one who seemed to understand my silence? Because I think I remember your wife, Elias, Haruko continued, her voice soft, tentative, watching his reaction. His heart skipped a beat, a sudden, sharp intake of breath, a profound jolt. What? Years ago? Haruko asked, her eyes searching his, filled with a tentative hope. She used to teach English at the community center on Mott Street, right? A small, bustling place filled with so much life. Elias blinked, a profound shock washing over him, a dizzying sense of destiny. Yes, Emma. That's her. Haruko's eyes softened, a distant, cherished memory taking shape, transforming her formidable face. I was 19, alone, just arrived from Japan. No confidence, barely any vocabulary. I was placed in her class. You're Emma, she said, the name a soft reverence. She wore cherry blossom earrings, always had a thermos of miso soup, and she never made me feel stupid. She saw the fear, the struggle, and she met it with kindness, with infinite patience. Elias couldn't speak, a sudden, overwhelming wave of grief and wonder, of profound connection, washing over him, tears blurring his vision. He could see Emma so vividly in Haruko's description. She asked us once to write a letter to our future selves, Haruko said, her voice almost a reverent murmur, a sacred sharing. I wrote, one day, I want to be a woman who speaks truth without needing volume. A woman whose presence is enough. She looked at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears, filled with a shared, unexpected history. You were married to her, Elias, the woman who taught me to find my voice, even in silence. Elias's hands trembled in his lap, the crumpled HR notice forgotten, utterly insignificant now. She changed my life, Haruko, he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. But I never got to thank her. She disappeared from the center. They said she got sick. Leukemia, Elias whispered, the word a painful echo, a raw wound reopened. 6 months from diagnosis too. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, the memory still too sharp, too devastating. I'm sorry, Elias, Haruko said quietly, her voice filled with a profound empathy, her own eyes glistening. Truly, she was a light. A long silence stretched between them, and for once it wasn't empty. It was filled with the profound weight of shared memory, of intertwined lives, of a love that transcended time. Elias leaned back, his mind reeling, absorbing this astonishing revelation. You remembered her all this time. A chance encounter, yet she left such an imprint. She taught me my first sentence in English I ever loved, Haruko said, a faint smile on her tear-streaked face. What was it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. She smiled faintly, a bittersweet memory. Your voice matters even when it's quiet. He nodded, swallowing thick emotion, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down his cheek. She'd be so proud of you, Haruko, he managed to say, of what you did yesterday, of who you've become. Not sure I've lived up to that, he whispered, thinking of his own quiet, often invisible life. You have, Elias, she said, her voice firm, unwavering. You lived long enough to echo her impact, to carry her life forward, to be a testament to her teachings. That stopped him cold, because it was profoundly, undeniably true. His action, his kindness, his ability to truly listen, were Emma's legacy, extended through him. As he left Whittaker Tower, Haruko walked him to the private elevator. At the door, she hesitated, turning to him. I want to offer you a job, Elias, she said, her voice steady, professional, yet imbued with a warmth that hadn't been there before. Not as a janitor, as a consultant for internal ethics and communication training. To teach my executives, my entire staff, what you taught me about genuine connection, about reading the air, about understanding value beyond a title. You understand what real dignity looks like. I want that in my company. I need that in my company. He blinked, stunned, the offer monumental, life-changing. You serious? I'm rarely anything else, Elias. Elias exhaled slowly, a profound shift occurring within him, a dawning sense of possibility he hadn't dared to dream of. I'll think about it, Haruko. I truly will. I hope you do, she said, a soft smile on her lips. As the doors began to close, sealing them off from the bustling corporate world, she added softly, her voice carrying a profound sense of connection, a sacred trust. And Elias, tell Lily her mother was unforgettable. Tell her she changed lives. The doors sealed shut, and Elias stood there alone, descending. Only this time, he didn't feel like he was going down. He felt like he was rising, lifted by the unseen threads of the past and the unexpected, luminous seeds of a shared future. The echoes of Emma's kindness, long dormant, were finally finding their way home. That evening, back in his modest apartment, Elias opened the drawer he hadn't touched in years, a drawer filled with memories, with the ghosts of a past life. Inside was the small, worn envelope, Lily's letter to her mother, never mailed. Written in crayon, the vibrant colors faded with time, the words a child's heartfelt plea to the heavens. He unfolded it gently, the paper crinkling softly, a tangible link to a love that still pulsed within him, raw and eternal. Asterisk, dear Mommy, Daddy says you're in the sky. I wish you could come back. I want to show you my drawing of our family. In me and Daddy cleaning the stars. Elias pressed it to his chest, then slowly reached for a pen. He turned the paper over and began to write, his thoughts flowing onto the page, a conversation spanning time and dimensions, a message to Emma, brought forth by Haruko's unexpected revelation. My dearest Emma, tonight I met a part of your legacy. A woman, Haruko, who remembered you. Remembered your cherry blossom earrings, your miso soup, your kindness that saw through her fear when she was a lonely 19-year-old. You taught her that her voice mattered, even when it was quiet. Today, she taught me that mine still does. You always saw the truth in people, the unspoken beauty. I'm trying to carry that forward, Emma. Trying to be the man you saw, even with a mop in my hand. And our Lily, she is growing into a force of quiet strength, just like you. She found Haruko today, through your locket. It was like you orchestrated it all. A part of you, Emma, is still here, echoing in the kindness we share, in the connections we make. You never truly left. You just expanded. And because of you, because of Haruko, because of Lily, I think I might be ready to speak again. To live again. To love again. It's scary, but it feels right. Thank you, my love, for every silent lesson, every whispered truth. Forever yours, Elias. He folded this new letter, slipping it into the envelope with Lily's, a sacred testament to a continuing love story. The wind whispered through the Whitaker courtyard, rustling the leaves of the ancient sycamore trees like pages being turned in a profoundly old book. Elias stood beneath a cherry tree, its delicate blossoms just beginning to unfurl, holding Lily's backpack. His hands were still, but his heart wasn't. It thrummed with a nervous anticipation, a hopeful tremor. Today was her first official speech therapy session, a small, yet momentous step on a journey that felt both fragile and infinitely significant. Inside the towering glass building, the world of power suits and polished words churned on, indifferent. But Elias wasn't thinking about boardrooms or viral fame. He was thinking about his daughter, his soft-spoken, fierce-eyed girl who had taught him more about courage than anyone else, about the quiet strength of vulnerability. She's waiting for you, Elias, Haruko said, stepping beside him, her voice gentle, startling him from his reverie. Haruko wasn't in a blazer today, just a soft navy sweater and comfortable jeans, her hair in a low ponytail. She looked lighter, less burdened by the immense weight of her public persona, more at ease, more human. She asked if you'd sit in, she added, a faint, understanding smile on her lips. Me? He blinked, surprised, a knot of nervousness tightening in his stomach. The thought of being present for Lily's struggles, of witnessing her quiet battles, was both a privilege and a profound vulnerability. She said, Dad talks like the sky listens. I figured that meant something profound to her. Elias smiled, a genuine, warm smile that touched his eyes, melting some of his anxiety. She always says things sideways, Haruko, but they land right where they need to. She has her mother's way with words, even without speaking them aloud. They entered the small therapy room. It wasn't clinical. It was warm and inviting. Soft rugs on the floor, colorful beanbags, shelves overflowing with books arranged like rainbow spines, creating a comforting sanctuary designed to nurture nascent voices. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, facing Dr. Elena Vance, the speech therapist, her fingers wrapped tightly around a plush rabbit, her usual anchor in moments of anxiety. Haruko sat quietly in the corner, more mother figure now than global mogul, her presence a silent, unwavering pillar of support. Dr. Vance, a woman with kind, intelligent eyes and a patient, understanding smile, beamed gently. Hi, Lily. It's so good to see you again. Do you want to try again today? Lily looked up at Elias, her eyes wide with a silent question, seeking reassurance. He nodded, offering a gentle, encouraging smile. Only if you want to, sweetheart. No pressure. We're just here to try. A beat passed, a moment suspended in time, filled with unspoken hope and tender fear. Then she whispered something, almost inaudible, a mere wisp of sound, but Dr. Vance, with her keen, trained ear, caught it. Did you say okay? Lily nodded, a small, resolute dip of her head. The room held its breath, a collective, silent anticipation. Dr. Vance smiled, her face radiating warmth and encouragement. That's wonderful, Lily, the therapist said gently, her voice full of encouragement, careful not to overwhelm the fragile moment. The sky is blue. What a beautiful way to say it. Lily's fingers tightened around the rabbit, a tremor running through her small frame, a mix of fear and triumph. Do you want to try another? Lily didn't answer. Instead, she turned towards Haruko, her innocent gaze direct, and whispered, her voice a little stronger this time, I saw you cry. Haruko froze, her composure momentarily shattering, a profound vulnerability exposed. Silence flooded the room, thick with surprise and a sudden, raw intimacy. Lily tilted her head, her gaze unwavering, seeing straight into Haruko's soul. You were holding the locket. Elias tensed, his mind racing, a profound sense of destiny unfolding before him. Haruko whispered, her voice barely audible, Yes, I was. My mom had one, too, Lily said, her voice a soft echo of a cherished memory. But hers was broken. The chain was snapped. Haruko's voice shook, a profound tremor running through it, a dawning realization that felt like a jolt. Did it have cherry blossoms on it, Lily? Carved into the silver? Lily nodded, her eyes wide. Haruko looked at Elias, her eyes wide, filled with a shared, astonishing realization. He stared back, stunned, a piece of a long-lost puzzle falling into place, revealing a design far grander than he could have imagined. She gave it to me when I was little, Lily added, her voice soft, recalling the memory. She said, when people miss each other, the flowers remember. They help us connect when we can't be together. The room held still, as if afraid any sound might snap the fragile, magical thread connecting them across time and loss. Haruko rose slowly and knelt beside her, her movements fluid and gentle, her eyes never leaving Lily's. Your mother, Emma, was my teacher a long time ago. She was a very important person in my life. I didn't know you were her daughter until very recently, Lily. Lily blinked, her innocent gaze searching Haruko's face for answers, for truth. Did she teach you words? No, Haruko said, a soft, profound smile gracing her lips, filled with warmth and gratitude. She taught me silence, the kind that holds meaning, the kind that connects us when words fail. A single tear slid down Lily's cheek, reflecting the soft light, a tear of shared memory, of inherited grief. I miss her. Haruko reached into her pocket and pulled out her locket, the polished silver gleaming. Slowly, with reverent care, she opened it. Inside was a faded photo, Emma's warm, familiar smile, her cherry blossom earrings visible. Lily gasped, her small hand flying to her mouth in wonder. I have the other half, she exclaimed, her voice filled with profound awe. Elias sank into a nearby chair, the weight of the moment almost too much to bear. He remembered Emma, just before she passed, giving Lily the half locket, telling her, one day, my sweet girl, someone will return the other piece, and when they do, you'll know they are meant to be in your life. Haruko looked at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears, filled with a shared, profound understanding. She knew, Elias, Haruko whispered. She always knew more than she let on. She planted seeds of connection everywhere she went. Lily reached into her backpack, her small fingers fumbling with the clasp, pulled out her locket, and handed it to Haruko. The two halves clicked together, perfectly, a whisper of destiny, a delicate chime of completion. And the room, finally, exhaled, a collective sigh of wonder and profound peace. That night, Haruko invited them over, not to her glittering penthouse in Woodacre Tower, but to her real home. A modest, craftsman-style house tucked in a quiet corner of the city, shaded by ancient sycamore trees and lined with delicate wind chimes that sang softly in the evening breeze, a symphony of gentle whispers. It was the first time Elias saw her without a city skyline behind her, without the trappings of her immense wealth, without the armor of her corporate persona. She opened the door herself, barefoot, dressed in comfortable lounge clothes, her hair down. No staff, she said, a soft, welcoming smile on her face. Just us. This is the home of whispers. Lily clutched Elias's hand as they walked in. Elias noticed the walls were bare, not cold or stark, but simply waiting, like an empty canvas. You don't have any pictures, Lily observed, her innocent gaze sweeping the empty spaces, accustomed to the chaos of their own small apartment. Haruko paused, a thoughtful expression on her face, a flicker of old pain in her eyes. I used to think silence meant strength, Lily, a way to control everything, to protect myself. But now I think maybe I was just afraid of echoes, afraid of what memories might bring. Then let's make new ones, Elias said, his voice gentle, encouraging, a quiet promise. Over dinner, the conversation flowed soft, steady, real, unbound by formal language or corporate pretense. They talked about favorite childhood books, about words they liked and couldn't explain why, about the first time Haruko ever laughed until she cried, a rare, uninhibited moment. They talked about how Elias once sang a silly lullaby to distract Lily during a power outage and ended up being recorded by a neighbor, an embarrassing moment that quickly became a cherished family meme. She fell asleep halfway through the second verse, Elias chuckled, shaking his head at the memory. Didn't even hear the grand finale. She wasn't sleeping, Lily said, her eyes twinkling, a profound wisdom in her small voice. I just didn't want it to stop. I closed my eyes so I could listen longer. It was the best song. That silenced everyone for all the right reasons, a moment of poignant truth that underscored the quiet power of connection. Haruko looked at Elias, her eyes filled with a shared, profound understanding, a deep resonance of their intertwined journeys. You know, Elias, she said softly, when I lost my voice as a child, when I chose silence, it didn't happen overnight. It chipped away, piece by piece, until silence felt safer than being misunderstood, safer than the pain of not being heard. He nodded, her words echoing his own journey, his own retreat into a protective quiet. And now she met his eyes, a new vulnerability, a new hope in her gaze. Now I think maybe healing doesn't always look like sound. Sometimes it looks like being heard, truly heard, in the depths of your soul. He reached for her hand across the table, his touch gentle, reassuring. She didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, a silent promise. Later, as he tucked Lily into the guest bed, her small room filled with soft lamplight and the scent of fresh linen, she looked up at him, her eyes heavy with sleep but filled with an innocent, profound wisdom. Dad? Yes, love? Do you think Mommy can see us right now? Do you think she's happy? Elias smiled gently, his heart aching with love and a newfound sense of peace. I think she never stopped seeing us, sweetheart, and I think she's very, very happy right now. Lily curled into her pillow, her voice a soft murmur. Then I hope she sees I gave her locket back. I think it was waiting for Miss Haruko, like it knew where it belonged. Elias brushed her hair back, a tender gesture, a profound understanding dawning within him. I think you're right, Lily Bug. I think it did. Dad, she whispered again, her voice barely audible. Do you think Haruko could be part of our family one day? Like, really part of it? Elias paused, his heart swelling with a mix of fear and an exhilarating hope. He kissed her forehead, the soft skin warm beneath his lips. Sometimes, my love, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Families are built not just from blood, but from pieces that remember where they belong. Pieces that find each other across time and silence. Lily smiled with her eyes closed, drifting off to sleep. Like cherry blossoms, she whispered, her last conscious thought. Exactly like that, sweetheart, he murmured, pulling the blanket up to her chin, a profound sense of rightness settling over him. Outside, Haruko stood by the window, staring at the constellations, a vast, silent expanse of stars. Elias joined her, both quiet, comfortable in the unspoken language that had blossomed between them. You okay? He asked softly, sensing her vulnerability. She nodded, her gaze still fixed on the distant lights. I haven't been this scared in years, Elias. He raised an eyebrow, a silent question. Scared of what, Haruko? Of Vivienne? Of the corporate world? She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the starlight, a profound admission in their depths. Scared of feeling something real, of wanting to keep it, of allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to truly connect again after so long. He took her hand again, his touch gentle, reassuring, a steady anchor. Then let's keep it slow, he said, his voice a quiet promise. But not silent. Never silent again. She smiled, a radiant, unburdened smile that transformed her face. "Deal," she whispered, her fingers intertwining with his, a tangible link to a future they were tentatively building together. This was the home of whispers, where the quiet parts of their lives were finally finding a voice, finding a shared space to echo, and finding each other. "You didn't tell me the whole story, did you?" Elias's voice was soft, barely a whisper, yet the silence that followed was heavier than glass, resonating with an unspoken challenge. He stood by the kitchen sink, sleeves rolled up, rinsing a delicate teacup Lily had used earlier, his movements deliberate, almost meditative. His back was to Haruko, but she could feel his gaze, an almost palpable presence, even without seeing it. Haruko leaned against the kitchen doorway, arms folded across her chest, her bare feet silent on the hardwood, observing him with an intensity that missed nothing. "Which part do you mean, Elias?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral, yet with an underlying tremor of apprehension. "The part where you stopped believing you deserved to be loved," he replied, turning slowly, his gaze direct, profound, piercing through her defenses. "The part where you convinced yourself that your immense strength and success were a substitute for genuine human connection, for intimacy." She didn't flinch, not outwardly, but something shifted in her eyes, a subtle tremor in her carefully constructed composure, a hairline crack in her formidable armor. "I've seen people wear power like armor, Haruko," he continued, his voice gentle but unwavering. "A shield against the world. But you wear it like a punishment, like a self-imposed exile, a consequence of past hurts." That struck something deep, something profoundly raw and vulnerable within her, a truth she had long buried beneath layers of ambition and control. She moved slowly, deliberately, into the kitchen, her bare feet silent on the cool hardwood. "I never wanted to be that girl who waited for someone to save her, Elias. That girl who was dependent, vulnerable. I wanted to be strong, self-sufficient, unbreakable." "You're not that girl," Elias said, setting the teacup down gently, his hands reaching for hers, his touch soft yet firm. "You're the girl who taught herself how to fly, Haruko, who soared above every expectation, every limitation. But somewhere along the way, you forgot what it feels like to land, to be grounded, to allow yourself to be held." Haruko didn't answer with words, but her grip on his hand tightened, a silent acknowledgement. After a moment, she sat down at the kitchen table, her posture less rigid, and whispered, "Do you know why I offered you that job, Elias? Why I risked everything to bring you into my company?" Elias dried his hands with a towel, a faint, knowing smile touching his lips. "Because I spilled sanitizer on Kenji's designer heels and didn't blink. Because I calmly stood up to Vivienne Hayes when no one else dared." She laughed a little, a genuine, unburdened sound, the sound of release. "Partly, but mostly, Elias, it's because you looked me in the eyes like I wasn't a headline or a net worth or a scandal waiting to happen. You saw beyond the facade, beyond the noise. You saw me, the real me, and you did it with such quiet, unwavering kindness." "Haruko," he said gently, sitting across from her, his voice soft, filled with a deep understanding. "I was drowning in silence myself, Haruko. Not the kind outside, the world's indifference, but the one inside my own chest, the quiet grief that threatened to consume me. You think I helped Lily with her voice? She's the one who reminded me that some things are worth saying, even if your voice shakes. That true strength isn't about hiding pain, but about sharing it." Elias smiled faintly, a profound tenderness in his eyes. "She gets that from her mom, you know. Emma always believed in the power of vulnerability." Haruko hesitated, her eyes glassy, shimmering with unshed tears. "And you, Elias, do you ever miss her, Emma?" "Every day," he replied without hesitation, the truth simple, profound, and ever-present. "Every single day. But missing her doesn't mean I'm stuck, Haruko. It just means I loved well. It means she was real, and our love was real." She looked at him, her eyes searching his, a profound question in their depth. "How do you love again after losing something that defined you, something so essential?" "You don't," he said, his voice quiet, filled with a hard-won wisdom, his hand reaching across the table to gently touch her cheek, wiping away a stray tear. "You don't love again, Haruko. You just love differently. The heart doesn't have a limit. It just expands. It learns to make room for new joys, new connections, while still holding the precious memories of the past." Haruko lowered her gaze, her vulnerability raw, exposed. "I'm scared, Elias. Truly terrified." "So am I, Haruko," he admitted, his thumb gently stroking her skin. More than I can say, but I'm more scared of going through life untouched, Haruko, of staying in the silence, of not daring to feel again. The clock ticked softly in the quiet kitchen, marking the passage of moments that felt both eternal and fleeting. Then softly, with a profound courage, she reached across the table and touched his fingers, intertwining them with hers. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a grand, sweeping gesture. But it was real. A tangible connection, a promise whispered in the quiet space between them. A few days later, Haruko stepped onto the stage of the East Coast Women in Leadership Summit. Cameras flashed, a sea of sharp suits and curious eyes gazed up at her. She was scheduled to close the day with her keynote, something her PR team had carefully crafted for weeks, every word chosen for maximum impact. But as she stood at the podium, looking out into the vast audience, she paused. Then she went off script, profoundly and irrevocably. "Today," she began, her voice clear and resonant, filling the vast auditorium, "I was supposed to talk about market trends, sustainable growth, and how to build resilient teams in a competitive global landscape. But I'm going to talk about silence." People shifted in their seats, a ripple of surprised murmurs. "Silent," she said, her voice gaining strength, conviction, "isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's a cage. I know, because I lived there for a very long time. I built companies, I forged empires, I dominated boardrooms, but I never let anyone close enough to know what truly scared me at night. I never let anyone hear the true echo of my own silence." Elias, seated discreetly in the back row, sat up straighter, his gaze fixed on her, his heart swelling with pride and a deep, empathetic connection. She continued, her voice steady but raw, imbued with a profound, newfound honesty. "A little girl, wise beyond her years, once reminded me that even the quietest voices have a song inside them, a story worth hearing. And a janitor," her eyes found Elias in the back, a warm, knowing glance, "a humble, extraordinary man, once taught me that healing doesn't come with titles. It doesn't come with wealth or status. It comes with kindness, with unwavering consistency, and with the immense courage to stay, to truly listen, even when you're deeply uncomfortable, even when you're afraid." The audience held its breath, captivated by her raw vulnerability, her unexpected honesty. "I lost my voice, not physically, but emotionally, long before I ever gained the spotlight," Haruko said, her voice filled with a quiet strength that resonated deeply with many in the room. "But lately, thanks to these two incredible souls, I've been learning that it's never too late to start speaking again, to start living again, to start loving again." She paused, a genuine, radiant smile gracing her lips, and stepped back from the podium. The applause was thunderous, a roar of collective emotion, not polite, not performative. It was real, profoundly real. Later that night, Haruko found Elias waiting outside the back entrance, holding 2 paper cups of rich, dark cocoa, steam curling gently into the cool night air. "I figured you'd be dehydrated from all that honesty," he joked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. She took the cup with a smirk, the warmth of the ceramic a comfort in her hands. "You watched the whole thing." "I wouldn't have missed it for the world, Haruko," he said, nudging her shoulder gently. "Besides, I was hoping you'd mention janitors. Give us a shout-out." "You're more than that, Elias, and you know it," she said softly, her eyes holding his with a profound tenderness. "You're the man who walked into my silence and made it less lonely. You're the one who showed me the way back to myself." They sipped their cocoa under the city lights, street lamps casting golden halos on the pavement, the vibrant pulse of the city a distant, gentle hum. After a quiet moment, Haruko turned to him, her face serious. "There's something else I haven't told you, Elias. Something very difficult." Elias raised an eyebrow, a silent invitation, a patient presence. "My father didn't just leave me," she said, her voice cracking, a profound, old pain surfacing, raw and exposed. "He left because of me. He told me once that I was too much, Elias. Too loud, too emotional, too intense. He said I scared him, that my presence overwhelmed him. And when he left, I believed it. For years, I believed I was too broken to be loved, too flawed to deserve connection." Elias set his cocoa down on the hood of her car, the paper cup landing with a soft thud. Then he took her shoulders in his hand, firmly but gently, his gaze unwavering, full of compassion. "Haruko, no. Listen to me. You are not too much. You are just too bright for people still living in shadows. You scare people because you see through them, because you feel deeply, and because somewhere along the way, you forgot that being seen, truly seen, with all your beautiful intensity, is a gift, not a flaw. It's your greatest strength. It's what makes you extraordinary." She tried to blink away the tears, but they came, hot and fast, a torrent of grief and release, a cleansing storm. "I don't know how to believe that, Elias," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "That's okay," he whispered, pulling her gently into his arms, holding her close as she finally allowed herself to weep, releasing decades of suppressed pain. He held her not as a savior, but as someone who knew exactly what it felt like to rebuild something profound from the ashes, to carry the weight of an unspoken past, and to find hope in the present. Back at home, Lily watched from the upstairs window, her small face illuminated by the soft glow of a nightlight. She didn't say anything, just hugged her plush rabbit a little tighter and whispered, a knowing smile on her lips, "Told you, Mama!" He found her. He really did. Later that evening, Haruko and Elias sat on her living room floor, a comfortable chaos of scattered puzzle pieces between them. Lily nestled contentedly in the middle. No big announcements, no grand plans, just laughter, small stories, and the quiet satisfaction of pieces slowly finding where they belonged. Lily asked, pointing at one corner piece, "Do you think every puzzle has only one way to fit, Dad?" Elias paused, then smiled, a profound wisdom in his eyes. "The pieces themselves are fixed, Lily Bug, but sometimes you don't know where they go until you see the bigger picture, until you learn to look for connections you didn't expect and let them guide you." Haruko met his eyes across the coffee table, a profound understanding passing between them, a silent promise of a future yet to be fully assembled. And for the first time in years, she felt whole. Truly whole, not in a sense of completion, but in a sense of peaceful, joyful becoming. It was a quiet Saturday morning in early spring, the kind of morning where everything felt paused, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something gentle to arrive. Haruko stood barefoot in the sun-dappled kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, its warmth seeping into her skin. The light filtered in through the window, painting golden streaks across her silk robe, illuminating the subtle dust motes dancing in the air. Her hair was still tousled from sleep, and yet she looked more at peace, more radiant than she ever had. Elias was at the stove, humming something under his breath, a tuneless but happy melody, as he flipped pancakes badly, still. Lily sat on the counter, one leg swinging, her eyes wide with focused concentration as she sprinkled blueberries onto a pancake with surgical precision. "Careful, Lily Bug," Elias said, glancing at her over his shoulder, a playful warning in his voice. "That's pancake art. We're making memories here, masterpieces for our stomachs." Lily grinned, her front teeth still slightly gapped. "I'm making a bunny, Dad. This one's Mama Haruko." Haruko laughed softly, a genuine, joyful sound that filled the kitchen with warmth. "Why does my pancake have bunny ears, Lily?" "Because you're the bravest," Lily replied with the unassailable authority only a child could muster, her small finger pointing at Haruko. "And brave people have ears for listening to scared hearts, to help them feel safe and loved." Haruko blinked, a profound wave of emotion washing over her, tears welling in her eyes. "That one landed deep, Elias," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Elias looked over his shoulder and gave Haruko a knowing smile, his eyes warm. "I told you, Haruko, kids have a way of reading your soul since day one. They see what adults often miss." Later that afternoon, they visited the park where Lily had first given Haruko a small, wild flower the very first day Haruko had learned what love could sound like when words weren't enough. This time, Haruko brought the flower. A single, perfect cherry blossom, fallen from a nearby tree, still pristine and vibrant. She handed it to Lily as they sat beneath the blooming cherry blossom trees, their delicate pink petals dancing in the breeze, a silent celebration of life, renewal, and enduring connection. "This is for you, Lily," Haruko said, her voice soft, imbued with profound meaning, a sacred offering. Lily tilted her head, her gaze curious, innocent, yet deeply perceptive. "Why, Mama Haruko?" "Because you reminded me that love isn't perfect, Lily. It's just patient and tenacious. And it always finds a way to connect, to heal, to bloom, even after winter." Lily ran her fingers along the soft petals, her small hand tracing the delicate veins. "Does that mean you'll stay even when I'm mad or quiet again? Even when I don't know the words, or I'm feeling scared?" Haruko nodded, her eyes gentle, unwavering, filled with a deep, unbreakable promise. "Especially then, sweetheart. Always then. Because that's when you need me most, and that's when I'll listen hardest." Lily leaned her head against Haruko's shoulder, a gesture of profound trust and belonging, a complete surrender to love. "You didn't run when I was broken," she whispered, her voice so soft it was almost lost in the wind, yet ringing with absolute truth. "You helped me remember the colors in the world. You helped me find my voice inside." Elias watched them from a distance, his heart overflowing, utterly full, a profound sense of rightness settling over him. In that moment, he didn't see the formidable CEO or the once silent little girl. He saw the family they had built, one heartbeat at a time, one shared silence, one whispered truth after another, a tapestry of love woven with threads of resilience and compassion. That evening, the three of them sat on the floor in Haruko's art room, now beautifully repurposed as a cozy, vibrant space full of books, soft lighting, and a wall completely covered in Lily's exuberant crayon masterpieces. A blank canvas, pristine and inviting, sat before them on an easel, awaiting a new creation. Haruko handed Lily a brush, its bristles soft against her palm. "Your turn to start, Lily," she said, her voice encouraging, inviting her into the creative process. Lily hesitated, her brow furrowed in concentration, her small mind pondering the vastness of the blank space. "What should I paint, Mama Haruko?" "Anything." "What does this family look like to you, Lily?" Elias asked, his voice gentle, a silent invitation to express her deepest, most heartfelt feelings. Lily dipped her brush in vibrant yellow and painted a small, radiant sun in the corner of the canvas, its rays stretching out with joyful abandon. "Sun?" Haruko asked softly, her gaze curious, a question in her eyes. Lily shook her head. "That's Elias. He's always warm, even when it rains. He brings light and makes me feel safe." Haruko smiled, a profound warmth spreading through her, deeply touched by the depth of Lily's perception, her ability to see the essence of people. "And what about me, Lily?" Lily then drew a large, strong tree, its roots reaching deep into the earth, its branches spreading wide, grounding everything else on the page, providing shelter. "You're the root, Mama Haruko," she said with quiet conviction. "You keep us strong. You make us feel safe and steady, no matter what." "And you?" Elias asked, his voice soft, his heart overflowing with a love so vast it felt almost overwhelming. Lily paused, then carefully, with utmost precision, in the very center of the canvas, she painted a heart. A small, vibrant, pulsing heart, painted in shades of soft pink and crimson. "I'm the space in between," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet resonating with profound truth, with the wisdom of a child's pure heart. "The quiet part, the part that holds all the pieces, but it's still love. It holds everything together, Dad. All of us." Haruko felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, a profound understanding washing over her, a sense of completion she hadn't known she craved. She reached out, brushing a lock of hair behind Lily's ear, her touch tender, loving, sacred. "You're not the quiet part anymore, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, filled with a promise. "You're the voice that taught us all how to listen, the voice that showed us how to truly see, how to truly connect, and how to love beyond words." The following week, Haruko published a children's book. Not under her company's brand, not under her name as CEO of a global tech empire. Just as Haruko and Lily Tanaka Thorne. The book was titled *The Girl Who Drew Silence*, a simple, poignant tale of a girl who didn't speak with words, but painted the world with colors no one else could see, whose quiet observations held immense wisdom, and whose drawings became her voice. The final page read, "She never needed to shout. Her love was loud enough." It became a quiet bestseller, a phenomenon passed between parents and teachers, therapists and foster homes, touching countless lives. Not because it was flashy or marketed heavily, but because it was true. Its gentle message resonated deeply, healing wounds and opening hearts. People began reaching out from all corners of the world. Letters came in. Messages from mothers, from daughters, from grown men who hadn't spoken to their children in years, whose own silences had become insurmountable barriers. One note, scribbled on a worn piece of paper, read, "I thought my son was unreachable until I realized he wasn't silent. I just wasn't listening the right way. Your book showed me how to hear." Months later, on a cool, fragrant evening in June, the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine and the soft rustle of leaves, Haruko, Elias, and Lily stood together in a modest backyard, bathed in the soft glow of twinkling fairy lights and the warmth of gentle laughter. It wasn't a grand wedding, not a lavish affair designed for public consumption or corporate show. It was just a gathering of a few close friends and family, a cherished circle of love, Lily, radiant in a pale pink dress, her hair adorned with a single cherry blossom, carried a small basket of rose petals, her eyes shining with unadulterated joy. When Elias turned to Haruko, his voice caught with emotion, a profound tenderness in his gaze, a lifetime of unspoken longing finally finding its voice. "You know," he said, a gentle teasing in his tone, "for a woman who built a business empire from nothing, who commanded boardrooms with a single glance, it took you an awfully long time to let someone love you. To let me love you." She raised an eyebrow, her smile soft, knowing, full of profound affection, her eyes shining with reciprocal love. "And for a janitor with a mop and a heart of gold, Elias Thorne, you're surprisingly patient, surprisingly stubborn, and utterly irresistible." They both laughed, a shared, joyful sound that echoed through the soft night, a perfect harmony. Then Haruko leaned in and whispered so only he could hear, her breath warm against his ear, a sacred vow. "Thank you for never trying to fix me, for never trying to change me, for just standing still, with unwavering patience, until I could find my way back to myself, to you, to us." And when they exchanged vows, beneath the shimmering fairy lights and the silent, watchful eyes of the stars, they didn't promise perfection. They didn't promise a life without challenges or sorrows. They promised presence. They promised to speak the truth even when it trembled. They promised to listen, truly listen, even when there were no words. Lily cheered as they kissed, her small voice a burst of pure, unadulterated joy, her arms thrown wide in celebration. Then she looked up at the vast, star-filled sky and whispered, a secret shared with the universe, with a mother who was always watching. Mama found her voice, Emma. She really did. And she found her heart, too. That night, under the silent, watchful gaze of the moon, Haruko stood beside Elias in the yard, his arm wrapped securely around her waist, watching Lily chase fireflies barefoot, her laughter ringing out like tiny, enchanted bells. "Did you ever think," she said softly, leaning her head against his shoulder, her voice filled with wonder, "that a spilled bucket in a hotel hallway, a moment of awkward silence, would lead to all this, to a new life, to a family built on such unexpected, beautiful foundations?" Elias slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer, his embrace warm and strong, a steady anchor in a world that had once felt so chaotic. "I've stopped being surprised by what happens when people stay, Haruko. When they choose kindness over convenience. When they dare to truly see each other, to listen to the echoes of their hearts, and to be brave enough to be vulnerable." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears, reflecting the starlight, a profound serenity in their depths. "And you, Elias, what are you still searching for, now that you've found so much?" He smiled, a deep, contented smile, his heart utterly full, overflowing with gratitude and love. "Honestly, Haruko, I think I found it. It wasn't a place or a plan or a title or a grand achievement. It was this, us. A home built not on loud pronouncements, but on quiet truths. A home built on love." She leaned her head against his shoulder, finding her anchor, finding her peace. They stood in silence, not the heavy, isolating kind, but the kind that fills you. The kind that expands the heart and grounds the soul. And in that quiet, Haruko finally understood something profound. The deepest connections don't always need a voice. Sometimes love is the language that speaks when everything else falls away. It is the loudest, most undeniable truth of all. And just like that, a janitor who learned to listen, a quiet girl who found her voice, and a powerful woman who had forgotten how to feel, found their way home. Sometimes it takes just one act of kindness, one person who chooses to stay, and a quiet love that refuses to give up, to change everything. If this story has touched your heart, we would love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Please leave your city or country in the comments. We read every single comment. And let us know which part of the story resonated with you the most. If you believe the world needs more stories like this full of healing, hope, and kindness, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next journey. New stories will be coming soon, and we would be thrilled to have you along. Thank you so much for following. See you next time. Take care of your heart and never stop believing in second chances.